great. Well,
Okay,
yeah,
it is 10. I'm gonna mute myself and just put like 1 minute left when it's time.
great. Well, Yanna, thank you for being here, and Nina as well. It is now 10 o'clock. So thank you for joining us this morning here on Eastern Time on the East Coast. We are here today and on Thursday to celebrate the candidates graduating from the design and technology programs at Parsons School of Design at the New School in the both MFA and BFA degree programs. We have 2 days of streaming symposia on a variety of topics. We've invited guest moderators to help us comment on the panel discussions. This is not a critique. These candidates have endured 2 years of critique. Today is a day to recognize their research, scholarship, and creative practice, as well as to give them a chance to express their ideas, and the moderators will be able to intersect these projects around the themes. And we are so excited to share these works with the world. This is streaming live on YouTube, so we encourage you to share the YouTube link, especially if you are sharing this with friends and families. And when you share it on social media, please include the hashtag Entropy, which is the name of the thesis show this year. Entropy is a name that came from the students who themselves have endured at the New School, not only the COVID years, but also a bruising labor strike last semester. So it's especially impressive that this class is emerging out of a grueling time in their studies. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first moderator and our first panel topic. So bear with me for a second while I get my things organized. The first session this morning is the topic of healthcare and well-being. We have a few projects looking particularly at the future of healthcare and society's well-being, and the way that it lies in the meaningful application of technology, design, and research. These projects lie in the realms of healthcare, medicine, lifestyle, and mental health. Our moderator this morning is Yanna Vogiazou, an independent design consultant with 14 years of professional experience, drawing from tech startups, academic research, and innovation in the nonprofit sector. She specializes in user research and human-centered design, HCD, for social and environmental impact projects. She works on complex problems to solve and projects that make the world a better place. She has a PhD in human-computer interaction and is committed to designing accessible, meaningful, and useful products and services. Our first student this morning is Nina Lahoti. And so at this time, I will ask Nina to share the screen and begin the presentation.
All right. Good morning. My name is Nina Lahoti, and I'm excited to share my thesis work investigating the large-scale potential of addressing small-scale issues. I explore this potential through the optimization of medication management. A bit about me. I'm a product designer. I graduated from Rice University with a bachelor's degree in sociology in 2021, and I'm interested in creating simple solutions to everyday problems. My thesis took the form of a smart pillbox with an integrated app. The pillbox comes in two forms. One is a standalone model, and one mimics the form of a phone wallet and can attach to the back of a phone case. The pillbox features automatic medication logging. When a pill is removed from the pillbox, the app logs that the medication was taken. This log is easily accessible through the app. The app allows for customizable reminders, so users can set up reminders to take their medication as well as to refill their pillboxes. Throughout the product's development, I focused on discrete design. The pillbox has a sliding cover to disguise its function. Under the base of each pillbox compartment, there's a spring placed on top of a small button. When a pill is placed in the compartment and the lid is closed, the spring compresses and pushes the button. This serves two functions. First, through the button, the pillbox can recognize if the compartment is full as well as if it is empty. This mechanism is what allows for automatic logging when a pill is removed from the box. Secondly, the spring holds the pill between the pillbox lid and the base, minimizing the rattling sound that often accompanies pillboxes and pill bottles. This visual further shows how the pillbox and app are connected. A notification will prompt the user to take their medication. When the medication is removed from the pillbox, the app marks this dose as taken. This automatic logging works even without opening the app. The log is available in the app and takes the form of a calendar. Upcoming doses are shown in yellow, successfully logged doses are shown in green, and missed doses are shown in red. As I talk about my product development, I want to explain the theoretical basis for my work. Many conditions come with treatment plans that entail everyday actions such as taking daily medication or monitoring vitals. While the aforementioned tasks may seem simple to perform, they often come with overlooked inconveniences. These everyday inconveniences can build up into acute stress over time. Studies show that everyday stress is a larger contributor to overall stress than even traumatic events. Further, stress has a strong positive correlation with negative mental and physical effects, and these effects can worsen one's condition. In order to intervene, I was interested in simplifying an action common in treatment plans in order to eliminate some of this everyday stress. In my process, I used ease of use, accessibility, and comfort as key tenets of simplicity. Ease of use as a value is self-evident, and accessibility reduces barriers to successful product use. Physical, visual, and cognitive accessibility are baked into my product, but other forms of access, such as financial, are salient as well. Optimizing accessibility promotes a standardized ease of use across the user population. The connection between simplicity and comfort is substantiated in quality of performance. Research shows that higher levels of comfort yield higher levels of performance. By increasing performance, one increases ease of use, leading to an overall simpler user experience. I see my role in this process primarily as a designer. I am not attempting to recreate any sort of treatment plan or action. Rather, I conducted continuous research in order to make informed decisions and focused on the synthesis of existing research and technology to create my product. My initial target audience was those diagnosed with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. This syndrome essentially is based in lowered blood volume upon standing and often comes with many coexisting conditions. I chose this audience because this is a relatively new diagnosis, and while there is research being done on POTS, most of this focuses on understanding why it occurs rather than on increasing quality of life for those diagnosed. I conducted 2 exploratory interviews to better understand my audience. I spoke to 2 young women, one diagnosed in childhood and one diagnosed more recently. While this narrow demographic may seem limiting, the majority of those diagnosed with POTS fall into this demographic, so I deemed it sufficient for exploratory research. In my interviews, I found that main grievances revolved around blood pressure concerns and medication management. Because these 2 issues are rather widespread, I decided to reassess my audience to be those affected by each issue. When considering opportunities, I decided to move forward with a focus on optimizing medication management. To begin, I conducted 5 user interviews of people of differing ages, races, and genders, all of whom take medication daily. In these interviews, I asked them to walk me through an average day, making sure to note anything to do with medication. Main pain points revolved around remembering to take medication, commuting, and refilling pillboxes. Concerns around commuting mainly had to do with discretion, especially as typical pillboxes, as noted earlier, can be loud when rattled. Main opportunities arose in customizable reminders, increased discretion, and the introduction of tracking logs. As noted earlier, my product allows users to set up reminders to take and refill medication. It also features a sliding cover and a model disguised as a phone wallet to increase discretion, and the app has an easily accessible log of upcoming, taken, and missed doses. To make my product, I wanted to minimize overall size. In order to accomplish this, I created a custom printed circuit board. I used a small microcontroller with Bluetooth capabilities and a simple circuit in order to allow for long-term connectivity while still maximizing battery life. When developing the app, I focused on minimizing onboarding and upkeep so that users only had to use the app if they wanted to access the log. Through numerous user tests, I worked to create a comfortable and simple user experience. This concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure sharing about my process and my thesis.
Thank you, Nina, for getting us started this morning. We will hear from another presenter, and then we'll take a break to hear from feedback from our moderator, Yanna, on the first two projects. So just if you're joining us, because some people may be joining us now, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the Parsons DT Symposium for the MFA and BFA candidates this year. We are currently in the topic of healthcare and well-being, where we'll be reviewing 4 projects. We just heard from Nina. We're going to hear from Heeya, then Shangshang, and Jing Jing after a commentary break. Thanks all for joining us today. Again, if you are here on the YouTube, please share it with friends under the hashtag Entropy. We'd be delighted to share what's been being discussed today. And thank you so much for joining us in the symposium today, celebrating the works of the BFA and MFA class of 2023 in the Entropy show. You should also know that a pop-up exhibition is being set up right now at East 16th Street in New York and will be open this evening. And another pop-up exhibition will be launched again. So do check out our website, parsons.edu/DT-2023. We will now introduce our next presenter. And go ahead, Heeya, go ahead and share your screen and you can begin.
Thank you, David, for the introduction. A content warning, as my presentation and the topics I discuss relate to medical injustice stories and visuals and may be upsetting or triggering. This is my friend Vanessa, and she's 24 years old. A couple of years ago, Vanessa noticed a bump on her breast. She went to the doctor and described her symptoms and concerns. She was told to put a hot towel over it over certain intervals for a period of time. She noticed that the bump became worse while doing this. She went back to the doctor, time passed, and unfortunately, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. When Vanessa was voicing her concerns during her initial doctor's visit, the doctor brushed her concerns off, thinking she was overreacting, and said that she was too young to have breast cancer. If she had been properly examined and not ignored despite her young age, she may have been able to avoid the struggle that was to come, to fight cancer. Unfortunately, this experience is not unique to Vanessa. The worldwide misdiagnosis rate is estimated at around 5 to 6%, which is around 12 million US patients a year, or 1 in 20 adults. Hi, I'm Hia Modi, a creative technologist interested in healthcare and health tech, and I aspire to make change in the healthcare system so that there aren't more stories like Vanessa's in the future. A deeper dive into the problem. The chances of a patient of color being misdiagnosed are greater than those of a white patient. Unequal medical care and quality of diagnosis received isn't due to just location, education, or income. It's also due to, at times, cognitive biases of healthcare professionals and decades of clinical studies that examined only white male bodies. This leads to unequal medical care for women, people of color, and minorities or immigrants. Images of conditions on dark skin are underrepresented in educational materials. This means that med school students and future doctors are trained to be biased towards white skin and aren't able to identify conditions on varying skin tones as easily. As you can see here, it's really important to be able to train on inclusive case studies because conditions and symptoms can look very different on different skin tones. For example, during a medical school student's clinical rotation, a Black patient came to the clinic with a mysterious rash that was a purplish hue. No one knew what it was. A biopsy revealed that it was psoriasis, a common skin condition that doctors usually diagnose on site, yet it often goes unidentified and untreated in patients of color. Studies have shown that Black patients are less likely to get certain treatments than white people with the same conditions. Symptoms on the skin are some of the initial signs of certain illnesses and diseases. So if doctors aren't able to diagnose and treat them effectively, this means that minorities are more prone to developing these conditions to more fatal stages and receiving a lower quality of care. This is a big problem with a lot of layers, factors, and effects. So what is the main problem I'm addressing? People have been experienced misdiagnosis, having their symptoms ignored by their healthcare providers, or have been wronged by the system that don't have a place to voice their experiences. They go through these experiences knowing they could have been avoided, but don't have a voice. Sure, communities do exist and stories have been told. News outlets mainly cover stories of people who've been misdiagnosed for over 15 years or have critical misdiagnoses, the big stories. But the pain and injustice is real, regardless of how long your misdiagnosis lasted. There are Reddit and Facebook communities that share these stories, but sometimes it is only part of the goal of the community, not the entire aim, and it's not one big collective. These problems are unknown to many, and there is a lack of awareness. And awareness is the first step to effectuate change. As a way of validating the experience of these people, and in turn of the problems in the healthcare and education system, I'm creating a data visualization web experience that shines a light on people's misdiagnosis stories as a way of forming a collective community. This experience aims to ignite the audience's feelings and empathy through presence and personal connection. It aims to form a connection between the viewer and those telling the stories. You're presented with a greenhouse, in which stands a mannequin. The greenhouse, it sets up the environment as a safe space for the mannequin that they have come to, and to be the one that with the stories it has faced. The mannequin represents the people who have been affected by biases in healthcare that have been led to their misdiagnosis. The mannequin stands bare, unclothed, and unnurtured to show that people have to continue to live their lives as normal, unable to make change or speak up. Over time, these stories become buried by themselves and forgotten by others. The experience encourages the user to enter the mannequin's body and uncover their seeds, these stories from the skin that they lie within, in order to nurture and reclothe the mannequin. You can contribute your story by filling out a few questions on your misdiagnosis story or uploading a voice recording telling your story. Your story gets planted as a seed in the skin in the form of a skin cell to be discovered and nurtured by viewers. My data collection process involves sending out a Google form to different communities of people, such as cancer groups and other diagnosis groups on Facebook, Reddit communities built around specific demographics, and sharing the form with my network. I'd like to take this experience to the real world in order to partner with institutions to make change. I'd like to partner with clinics and hospitals such as NYU Langone Health, Tisch Hospital, Mount Sinai Hospital, and Advanced Dermatology Clinic. I'd like to engage with organizations and medical schools to run this experience with med students, teachers, doctors, and even larger hospital institutions, as well as more administrative standpoint, such as policymakers. The goal of my thesis are to hold institutions accountable, highlight the demographics of people most affected by systemic biases in healthcare, and provide people with a community where they can share and learn. If you'd like to experience my work in real time, I'll be exhibiting my work at Parsons this Thursday from 6 to 8. To effectuate change, awareness is the first step. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heeya and Nina. Hopefully your cameras have been enabled during your presentation, so you are able to turn those on if you want for this discussion. We have about 10 minutes to discuss your two projects with our moderator, Yanna. So thanks so much for your presentations, and I look forward to this brief discussion.
Thank you very much indeed to both of you. Very inspiring and both beautiful projects. Let me start with Nina's. I love the simplicity of the box and the connection between an element that is sort of a burden in your day-to-day life that is connected to the device that you use most, which is your mobile phone. So I think there's a certain beauty in making those two connect. And also,
we might have just lost our moderator.
No, there she is.
sorry, that was strange. So yes, I was talking about giving some feedback to Nina. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
you're back. Yep,
Sorry,
that's okay.
Zoom just disappeared. So I also loved the connection between basically the automatic logging, because one of the problems that we know that people have is just, logging their medications so they can actually, make use of that information in the long term. And we know that, for example, from diabetes, that's really important because you have to correlate that with other data, like with blood pressure and so on. So I guess one question here would be very interesting to explore is like, can you think of what are the use cases, what are the uses you could do with this easily collectible information about, whether somebody is taking their medication on time and as they're supposed to be, how many times they may have missed it, or apart from the reminders, can you think of what you could do with that information in the long term to bring more benefits to the user?
Yes, of course. First, thank you so much for those kind words. I really appreciate it. There are definitely a few different use cases I've been thinking of throughout this process. One is thinking about younger children who take medication throughout the day at school. If their parents are able to also access this app, being able to know that your child is routinely taking their medication and not missing doses is definitely really important. I also think in general, using this medication data would be really helpful in medication studies, just seeing how often people do reliably take their medication, thinking about are there specific types of medications that people tend to miss, and what different ways can we make those medications easier to take? Taking those proactive steps to really make things as simple as possible for patients.
Great, thank you very much. And I think I have time to ask you one more quick question. If you were going to work with the different conditions, how do you think would you need to adapt the design, the industrial design, the physical design of the pillbox to be able to cover, maybe a different type of, diseases than the one that you studied, like in order to reach your large scale objective, or, make it, let's say, a more of a a broader product in the future?
Of course. I definitely imagine this as a project where there's much room for growth, especially in terms of how much you can customize the pillbox. For example, just in terms of the size of a pill, that definitely makes makes a large impact in how a pillbox is designed. So being able to customize a pillbox to have a few larger compartments, or if you take a lot of very small pills, be able to have a pillbox that accommodates for just very small pills, and being able to have more space for more medication is definitely someplace where I think there's a lot of room to grow. I think also being able to have the pillbox be that customizable, you can do a lot in terms of how big it is in general, which I think helps a lot with physical accessibility. Having the tabs of the pillbox closures be a little larger, just so that they're easier to open. Even having a system where there's a button to open a pillbox compartment instead of having to manually open it, just so that you have a little less strain on your hands in case that's a concern for someone.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm now going to pass to Hia. I hope I pronounce your name correctly, but you know, we are the group of the strange first and second names here. So I feel very much, very much at place. So thank you also for your great presentation. I really love the seed metaphor. I have to say, this is very much spot on, because it captures the idea of nurturing. So if we think about all those cases, the more default social response is, to either deny that they happened or pretend that they don't exist, or somehow not to think about them, because it makes us as uncomfortable as social human beings that those cases do exist. So I think bringing the metaphor of seed in this and this nurturing approach together is truly beautiful. So I guess I had a couple of questions. I was thinking more in terms of, I understand how you were motivated very much by this topic and how it sort of like it came about. I was thinking, what was the design process that you follow? How did you choose to do this kind of avatar-based visualization versus many other things that you could explore? How did you come up with that? If you can tell us a bit more about that.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your kind words, and thank you for the thoughtful question. That's a great question. I think, well, I wanted to create a data visualization, but I didn't want to just do like a flat data visualization that is common, where the data is just there. You can toggle between different groups, like different genders or different races, different locations, and just see what the data is like. I wanted to create a more personal experience in order to foster the connection between the person viewing the experience and the people that have contributed. I feel that this is such a personal topic, and even during my data collection process, gathering some of the stories that of people who have been misdiagnosed, it was a very personal journey, especially since I have a friend who went through this experience as well, and that this project has uncovered so many different stories of people that I knew that have gone through this, but I didn't know that about them before. So it was a very personal journey on my part as well. And so I wanted to create an ode to that and have my thesis project be personal in that sense, and have metaphors, have a personal journey that people experience through the nurturing of seeds. I think that I agree that that is a very powerful metaphor, because these seeds are planted in the system, but then they just grow and they end up being buried over time because people aren't able to really have their voices heard or make change. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. And my last question would be more about the perspective of the healthcare professional. So if we want to bring them in this visualization and and in especially considering your next steps and what you want to do with the projects and how where you want to take it. First of all, it would be nice to know if any of them have had an input in the design, or if you had some early user feedback from the healthcare perspective, you know, somebody who is who has a medical profession and how they respond to your visualization, and also think about how you might involve them, how you might evolve your visualization in the future to bring them closer to what you're trying to communicate, or to somehow make it even more accessible for the healthcare professional in order to achieve the impact that you really want to achieve.
Definitely, that's a great question that goes into my next steps. And to speak to that, I did throughout my design process, I consulted some mentors that I have at Mount Sinai, and that was really helpful in understanding the medical aspect of everything, and understanding how I would go about my next steps in terms of putting this experience out towards institutions, clinics and hospitals, as well as the education system. And so those are the two target systems that I have currently, because I believe that this problem is twofold. The problem both affects the current practitioners that have been trained on primarily clinical studies focused on white male bodies, as well as the education system of current med students who are being trained in this way. And I know that there has been change in the recent years in the education system, but it's mainly been through just optional databases that students can look at, where they can see a variety of different different skins and how different diseases might appear on these different skins. But it is mainly optional. And there isn't really a system or a product or a way to allow people who have this inherent bias to still practice and be able to practice more effectively and more inclusively. And so I would see this going into a more long-term partnership of how we can come up with some sort of solution or system that allows practitioners and med students to do so in the future.
That's great. I wish you all the best with your next step, and I'm looking forward to one day maybe reading an article about it online. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Hia. Really appreciate your presentations. And we have now done half of this panel on healthcare and well-being. So at this time, I am eager to introduce our next panelist, who is Shangshang Li, and I will get them pinned. And you can share your screen and begin your presentation.
Okay. So hi all, I'm Shan Shan Lee, and my project is called Carroll, and it's a garden simulation light fitness game. I'm a BFA student at DT and tracking in creative technology. My interests are interactive simulations, games, and also user interface design. So for my project, I focus on the following questions. How can exercise help relieve psychological stress? How can technology and design help people who hate sports reduce their resistance to sports? My thesis projects aim to see how data visualization can help users overcome their mental barriers through fitness. My project, Carroll, is a mobile game that aims to help users develop healthy habits and relieve psychological stress through live fitness. Unlike other fitness apps that can be stressful or overwhelming for people who are inactive or resistant to movement, Carroll provides a unique approach that combines data visualization and simulation gameplay to encourage users to engage in light exercise at their own pace. My unique point of view is not to push a user to follow exercise plans as in other fitness apps, but most exercise apps are targeting people who have the habit of exercising already, or at least are open to exercise in the first place. As a result, even those apps, beginner mission can be impossible or stressful for people who are inactive or even resistant to exercise. So the reason why I wanted to design a live fitness mobile game with simulation elements is that I could not deal with my emotion and stress in the past year. So both my family and my therapist recommend me to do moderate exercise to reduce stress, but the idea itself sounds more stressful for a person who resists going out and has to deliberate about getting out of bed or a chair. So even worse, I have no motivation to do anything during that period. I was encouraged by the one push-up challenge from Stephen Gu's Mini Habits, Smaller Habits, Bigger Results, that book. The idea of mini habits alleviated some of my guilt about being powerless and not producing anything. I also used a simple habit building app that gave me a smile sticker while I finishing a habit or task. Even if I don't do them, the app won't flag them as other to-do lists or habit apps do, which makes me nervous. It made me realize that I don't have to set an exercise goal for myself, but just do whatever I want. But due to my anxiety, I desperately wanted something tangible. It's hard to see results in losing weight in the short term, which makes me more anxious. I also try to use some apps and tutorials to help me, but they are not friendly to a sedentary person. Not to mention Zombies Run, I even can't go through the first mission of Sandland, which just need me to stand up frequently. I needed an app that would encourage but not push me to exercise. The game's strategies of Pokemon Go gets players moving. Still, Pokemon Go players need to go outside for a better experience, which is difficult for a couch potato. At that time, I was obsessed with a gym management game simulation mobile game that incorporated merge gameplay called Fat Goose Gym, and also Peter Rabbit's Garden I played when I was a child also drove me to make my own business simulation live fitness game. And also Forest is another habit building app from which I get inspiration. So with that being said, I want to introduce to you my target audience. Her name is Coco. She is a couch potato who avoids any unnecessary outdoor activities and leaves her apartment only once a week. However, she now hopes to gradually get a healthier lifestyle and release stress instead of suffering stress from other fitness-related apps. The potato uses Carroll to begin a light fitness journey, which is easy to get started and has very little stress. She will also have an opportunity to DIY her own exercise pace and goals. And once she accomplishes these goals, she will get rewarded by the app. Another user is Grace. She is now feeling hopeless about losing weight and needs encouragement. Carroll is a perfect fit for her. She will not feel the pressure from others and will see a concrete result of her efforts on fitness. The user opened the app to have Rabbit company during live exercise. The various animation of Rabbit work makes the exercise process less boring, since the user wants to unlock more activities and skins of the rabbit and architectures and plants of the garden as soon as possible. The user may do more exercise or work or stand up more times than regularly. In Carroll, the player controls Rabbit to run a farm. So our avatar is called Rabbit. Instead of asking the user to do a specific exercise, the user can gain a coin from each move or stand up. If the user chooses to watch a rabbit while stretching, the rabbit goes into working mode. For example, if the player takes a step, the rabbit will hold the ground for once. Good to know when the game detects that the players engage in a more intense movement, the player will earn double energy count for each move to encourage movement. Planting carrots and other plants and trading with a merchant can also bring coins. The player can use coins to buy different crops for rabbit to plant, unlock more rabbit working animations, and more farm buildings. In the later game, the player can also purchase building and rabbit skins with coins, but by turning data into game assets and building users' own garden. So not only couch potatoes may be encouraged, but also users who are stuck in a weight loss plateau can be motivated. Carroll provides a fun and personalized experience for users to progress in their fitness plans. In the ideal version, so currently I only have the motion detecting part done, but not the garden simulation gameplay finished. And also in the ideal version, the user can also interact with the app, with Apple Watch, data access, and also on Mac and iPad. And those are the tools I basically use. And shout out to my photographer, also my thesis faculty. Yeah, that's it. Thanks you all.
Thank you so much, Shangshang. If you are just joining us on the live stream, you are at the oops, wrong screen. You are at the Parsons Design and Technology MFA and BFA thesis exhibition. We are in the health and wellness session, and we are about to invite our next attendee, our next presenter, Jing Jing Sun. I'm going to pin you now, and you are now invited to make your presentation and share your screen.
Cool. Oops, I think I clicked wrong with sharing the video. Okay. Cool. So hello everyone. My name is Jing Jing Sun. Today I'm going to presenting like how music will be supporting intergenerational social interactions. So I'm going to talk about like the relationship between grandparents and also their grandchildren. Currently in the United States, like 2.3 million of grandparents are raising nearly 2.8 million of their grandchildren in the US, and 38% of the grandparents provided babysittings or daycares. And in my culture, I came from a Chinese Asian cultures. This is also very common. And also grandparents play an important roles in the family's structures and can providing like supports, guidance, and love for their grandchildren. So having a strong bonds between them are really important and helping for the family's overall well-beings. However, intergenerational communication can be challenging since there's a huge age differences between these two generations. What is more, besides with the globalizations and immigrations, cross-cultural intergeneration relationships become more common, and also the language barriers also adds like difficulties for those two generations. So my study is about how music will be facilitating intergenerational social interactions, since music can be a powerful tool to promoting the interactions by sharing music tastes, creating unique memories, or just like being seen as like a medium to share emotional experiences. However, there's like a current lack of research on how music product designs supports intergenerational interactions. So for my thesis, I would like to examine like how music collaboration is able to promote such interactions for those kind of like music nuances. So to answer these questions, I conduct like user interviews with like 3 families to get more insights, and also I conduct user interviews with like domain experts to understanding more about like their domain knowledge, and also came up with like speculative design ideations. So come as like the user case, I came with my personal user case, like my families. My niece Ray was born in United States in 2020, and during the COVID-19, like my parents not able to come to visit her from China in the past 3 years. And then in this years, my mom was finally able to travel here and meet Ray, her granddaughters, in person. However, because they're having those kind of like languages differences and also with the children issues, for instance, like my niece was more interested in televisions instead of like playing around with my mom. So they're not able to having lots of interactions. And also my niece are not able to having correctly understanding emotions. Sometimes she crying and my mom just don't know how to do it. So for that, like from my family user needs, I found like my mom was really interested in to play more with Ray, and also like Ray to learn a bit more of music, and also to see like how they can be understanding each other and identify those emotion issues. And Ray, in the other hand, she likes music, but she just like so young, she's only 3 years old. So how to letting her understanding music and understanding her correctly expressing themselves are really important. So after from like learning from my family case, I began to wonder whether there's like problems that I identified is just my family needs, where that can be more universal. So to get more insight, I conduct like 2 additional user interviews with other families. And here's my interview questions. So afterwards, I was like finding 2 other unique families. One is from Japan, like the grandparents are Chinese, so they speak in Chinese, and their like granddaughters like is also 3 years old, and she only speak a little bit Chinese, with like more in Japanese. And the other family was grandmother like were more understanding in music, so she shared her experiences with like how she teaching her grandsons like to play music. And afterwards, I found like the universal problems are kind of like can be solved like with music. It's like they want to understanding more each other with like having more relationship bondings, and also to understanding the emotions. And also like their grandparents are really eager to letting their grandchildren to having those like kind of like music alignments. So afterwards, because they talking so much about the emotions, so I conduct with like interview with music therapists to understanding more how to designing things with like musics. So I conduct 3 interviews with music therapists specializing in children's and also like elderly people. So I asking them majorly 3 questions, topics. One is for how the interaction mechanism will be designed, and how to designing with the content and also with the shape design. Afterwards, we kind of like summarizing with the design suggestions, basically focusing on the design considerations, appearance design, also with like the domain knowledge from them, and also with the design ideations. We're more focusing on the physical tangible interface, because the grandparents actually don't want them to be interacting with the televisions or screens. And then during the interview with music therapists, they introducing me lots of different music therapy knowledges. Afterwards, I was examining more on the research on the tangible interface with physical computing, what kind of sensors we can be used, and what kind of sensors we can having more ideas to be focusing on. So on each kind of like sensors, they giving me really good examples, and then sharing me like how we designing together to be building upon those kind of like interactions. So afterwards, I came up with like certain design principles to be facilitating for the future design implementations. For design considerations, they came out with like accessibility is a really important issues, and also talking about like difference with multifunctionings and also with the flexibilities. And also they giving me good understandings on social interactions and emotion identifications and expressions, and also with music alignments. So however, because this is a research conduct with like only me as a researchers, so the limitation and future works will be, for the limitation is like, I really came with like a really small sample size, but also in the other hands for the future works, and because I having those so much data to be acquired, I'm able to having more design implementations, and also to be running for the co-design workshop with the actual users. And basically that's my, my research. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jing Jing and Shang. Now pleased to reintroduce Yanna Vogiazou to be your moderator and ask you questions and connect your projects. Thanks so much, Yanna.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Shangshang and Jing Jing, for presenting your great work today. Congratulations. Let's start with Shangshang. I think you are really hitting the nail on a very common problem that of course, became really widespread during the pandemic, but it's also very common among students and among a wide range of the population. So I think this is a very good way to address these behavior change problems. And I like the concept of having a kind of a totem, a rabbit that gives you direct feedback when you do the movement. So there is a difference, there is an innovation in this approach, which gives you the real-time feedback as opposed to, just scores, step counts, leaderboards, and all the other gamification elements that we're familiar from other fitness apps. I was thinking, looking at some of the examples in the videos that you shared with us, if you wanted for people to build up their mini habits and make them increasingly a little bit more complex. So, starting with very simple movements, but then make the movements a bit more more cardiovascular, or, like increase their level of activity, with a very, let's say, gradual kind of form of feedback or step by step. Have you thought about how you could go about that? Like if you wanted to evolve that a bit more to make them more engaged in, more complex forms of exercise?
So in fact, I will have, like, for the pop-up show, I may have a tutorial video, something goes through the first stage of it. So it will first direct the user to have like just minor movement, like stand up or walking around, and then it will triggering like the jogging, like more intense movement detection to tell the user you can to encourage user to do more intense movement. And also, as I mentioned, the garden simulation. So I have the shop, which have lots of skins, and the coins requirement will increasing for the like future stage. So which may also driven the user to do more exercise, like step by step.
Great. Another interesting aspect that we know from behavior change studies is that sometimes it helps, well, one of the factors that help, let's say, to increase your level of exercise or your healthy eating or whatever it is that you're trying to change is having a buddy or, kind of a support person in your group or family member who would actually help you and be supportive and encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I was thinking, how are you thinking of introducing maybe that social aspect in your game, which is not competitive, but more of a supporting, more of an encouraging one. So people actually have like a social, a buddy or a social interaction that makes them feel happier doing the exercise when they're interacting with the app.
So since that's kind of it's still on building, so I guess in the future stage, I will trigger the friend system so people can visit others garden to look around, like how's going on your friend's garden. So you may also be motivated, like something like, okay, I'm gonna to chasing my friends and I'm gonna to have more fancy assets than my friends. So kind of light competition between this. Yeah.
Great. And just a very quick question, because I think we still have the time. What did your friends and everybody who tried it said so far? What was your first feedback?
So I did see, like, I did some quite different user tests. And first, the first one is to target finding my target audience. And it's interesting really to see like people who have Asian background are more easy to get the point of that. Maybe that's because there are more otaku or something in Asia. And especially for people like game person are more interested in that, since we always like sit on the chair and having entertainment with our computer. And my in my recent user test, it's my friends also what I showing in the video. It's more like testing currently what I have for my app, and it's interesting to see like I only asked one of my friends to scan it, but everyone wanted to try it. And after one person begin to interact with it, like running or something, people just keep taking photos, and everyone just becomes like very crazy and work around at a place. So and it looks like, even though I don't talk about like how it's driven people to stand up or something, but since the rabbit is so cute, so everyone wanna to see it work out. Yeah.
That's great. Then you've hit a nail there on something interesting. I hope you you enjoy developing it a bit further the way you want. Thank you very much, Shangshang. Now let's revisit Jing Jing's project. Thank you very much for your presentation, Jing Jing. I think it's great to see that you're trying to do something that helps people move away from screens. And especially, this is also a very interesting problem to solve. And I think by, taking out the screen out of the equation, you've already, opened up a very interesting space to explore. I understand that you wanted to do a lot more things that you didn't get the chance to complete. And you mentioned also the co-creation workshop at the end that you wanted to do. Do you want to share with us, if you had the chance to bring in the people that or some of the people that you interviewed in a co-creation workshop, of what would you like to do as part of that?
Yes, that's a really good question. Like I actually think about, because I'm having so many insights, and also I did the research with the physical computings. I will try to do more prototypes in the meantime, and then like showing them like how they play around with this, like to getting more data. And also in the meantime, probably like paper prototypes, like just like using paper as like a materials to letting them like to creating something together is also unique, because we're already having the patterns like for what kind of things, for instance, music alignments, and also it's like the music was like expressing emotions. We learn from the domain experts, so we able to giving them kind of like a stage or like different like strategies for kind of like a task to letting them play around together in the co-design workshops. So for personally, like if I just only arranging this myself, I probably just like having like probably like 4 or 6 people would be like good enough for me to getting more data, and then like just iterating the designs. That'll be better like for my strategies to do further on this research.
Great. And you're thinking of some kind of physical prototyping where the grandparents with the children will be able to create something, right? You're thinking of the creative direction.
Yes. I'm just
sense.
yes. I'm just thinking about using the felt because it's really soft, and also thinking about like just like a little bit like tiny things we can buy on the Michaels. That'll be easier, like to letting them like just not hurting themselves, just like exploring.
And have you also thought, I was wondering, it's very interesting, the selection of music as the main medium. Have you also thought about integrating other forms of, let's say, nonverbal communication, such as drawing or sketching, that could maybe be part of the experience as well, with or without the music? Have you considered that?
Yes, I do. Actually, before I was like not music is not on my hand in the like the first place, but just like because of the languages barriers, like for and also for instance like the emotion itself, like music are having like a really strong needs, like because learning music in their like childhood, that'll be really helpful for them like to be having a longer case one way is to learning music more, to expressing their like emotions, and other ways to coping them. So like having those ideas in their younger age, I assume they will be having some childhood developments for music's research. That's like something I want to look further, especially like with the music therapy knowledge. That will be better, like having me kind of like doing this as a formalizing research. But on the others, I do looking forward, but I guess that will be needs more collaborations with people having those kind of like expertise.
Great. And what would you like to do next? What would be your next step?
As
Now
a
that
design,
you have, well,
yes.
yes.
Yes, as a design technology students, we really like to make our hands on. Like, so that's like my next step. I'll be like just like doing the tangible interface like designs, and then like trying to just like to play around with those sensors to like further facilitating the co-design workshops.
Great. Thank you very much, Jing Jing.
Thank you.
Thank you both to Shangshang, Jingjing, Heeya, and Nina for presenting your projects today. And also many thanks to our guest moderator, Yanna. Thank you for reviewing these projects and putting them into context and giving us your insight. So we really appreciate your participation in the Parsons MFA and BFA Design and Technology Symposium today. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, David, and thanks to all the students who presented their hard work today. I wish you all the best with your next step, and hopefully there is an amazing next creative technology project waiting for you around the corner.
Fabulous. So we're going to make the changeover now to our next panel, Games and Society. So please stand by while we make the changeover. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next panel of our BFA and MFA Design and Technology Symposium. Let me just make a few more adjustments to our setup here, and I will introduce the guest moderator and our presenters in the Games and Society section. So give me one second here. Okay, let me make introductions. We are very pleased to have a discussion today on 4 projects in Games and Society. And our moderator today is Paolo Pedercini, a game designer, artist, and educator from Carnegie Mellon University. He teaches experimental game design, creative coding, and animation. Working under the project name Mola Industria, he produces video games addressing various social issues such as environmental justice, religion, labor, and alienation. Although his work exists primarily online, it has been exhibited internationally at festivals, galleries, and museums, including the Sundance Festival, the EMP Museum, Victoria and Albert Museum, Games for Change, and Indiecade. Indeed, the Games and Society panel is about games that have potential to have goals beyond play. Projects in this category utilize playful experiences to encourage civic engagement, promote empathy, educate others, and build community. They grapple with topics of climate change, dystopian futures, poverty, and social injustice to speculate a better world. This morning, we will hear from two presenters. We'll then give our moderator a chance to give comments. Then we'll hear from two more presenters, have another round of comments, and that will comprise our discussion today. And we look forward to it. At this time, I'm going to ask Shristi Singh to share her screen and begin her presentation. We look forward to the Games and Society panel now.
It says I'm unable to start the video.
Let me make you the co-host, and then you will be able to.
Okay. Okay, I hope my screen is visible. Can I get a confirmation?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Shristi, an interaction designer and writer whose main focus on my thesis year has been about the intersection of design and education, which is what my entire theme is about. So welcome to Craft Collect, an homage to India's heritage craftsmanship in the form of a card game. And I like to refer to this as making a game about making itself. This is an entire experiment in trying to use the intricacies of game design to talk about really equally intricate making processes, specifically the heritage craftsmanship practices that have existed in India for centuries. The big challenge with this was to take this expansive knowledge and give people who have zero knowledge and assume zero knowledge of players an overview of how these practices occur without taking away any of the important details. So with no further ado, I'd like to get started about the category of this game. Right now, I refer to it as a nonfiction card game because every single piece of information in this has been sourced directly from the spaces where they were created. In my time before DD, I was a writer and reporter who did a lot of documentation of different craft practices, which ranged from textile to bamboo weaving and rattan weaving to pottery to woodworking and several more. And these processes created different kinds of products, which were equally compelling. That involved woodworking and block printing, toy making, and the list goes on. The teams that I worked with were generous enough to let me use all of that material and that rich content to build off the game with. So everything you see here has been channeled into the essence of the game, into the main offering of the entire card game. These are the artifact cards inspired by real-life objects that range very different, equally distinct kinds of craft practices that have existed in the country for centuries and have been passed on for generations. These range from very specific Mughal-inspired intricacies of woodworking in wooden frames specifically, to a lacquer-infused toy-making process, to creating really intricate woven lamps and pottery that doesn't require pottery wheel, and lastly, block printing techniques. With the artifact cards in place, I can talk a little bit about how you can play the game. These objects are what players are given, and players are meant to be first-time makers who are tasked with creating them from scratch by connecting them to their right location, materials, processes, with the help of the artisans who are expert craftspeople for each particular object. A little bit about the setup. The artifacts that we talked about and in the game in its current iteration are 5 in total, and working in a reverse chronological order have very specific categories. Beginning with the artisan cards. These are the ones that talk about the expert craftsman, and all the information that are in these cards have been sourced directly from conversations I've had with them during my time collaborating or reporting about the practices. Next, based off of what I cataloged, I built 10 process cards, 2 for each house, where very crucial elements of the methodologies and the fabrication processes were logged, without which these objects couldn't be made and are very special to them. So the process cards are born of the material cards, which are in their own way equally important and serve as the tools and the materials that each card needs to be made. And lastly, we have the location. A lot of these crafts are situated crafts and cannot be built anywhere off of their location. These includes villages and towns in remote parts of India, and mapping them on the country helps people associate them to specific regions. With the setup in place, the gameplay starts with the main playing cards shuffled and all the artifact cards being put in their own pile. Players then make educated guesses and start placing cards to the one open artifact card, where if they have the right process or artisan card or material location that they think corresponds to it. They can also use your turn to start another action by opening a new artifact card, which they can contribute to. And this goes on till one particular artifact has its complete lineage in place. Now, the last person to place the card has the opportunity to collect this craft and win that round. But the way to figure out if the process is right in its entirety is by flipping every card over and seeing if the puzzle at the back connects smoothly on its edges. This is the victory state. However, there is a portion of the challenge round where there could be one or more cards that are incorrect and need to be replaced with the right process. This has been a really important checkpoint because it gives players the opportunity to go back into the game and see if they have the right card and swap it out. And this creates a process of self-discovery where they don't have to rely on an external answer key, but use the meaning within the front of the cards to make sense of the back of the cards. And they will always respond to the content in the card itself without having to move away or look at anything else. This all began with my question about how these different game mechanics and about how the entire domain of learning through play could lead to better understanding of India's crafts knowledge. And of course, because I was talking about game-based learning, I had to look at the principles of James G and identify some from the video-based game learning concepts to adapt them into my card game. It wasn't that difficult and it wasn't that different from how it works with video games. Number one, an important principle that was borrowed from the principle of production in James G's list was tactile experience. Given the richness and the tactility of all these objects, they exist in the physical world. So it was important for me to create something that also shared that kind of material space. And more importantly, it gives players the opportunity to move away from the screen and have some kind of supplemental educational material that didn't require internet or didn't require anything else except the deck of cards and a few friends to play with. Next is the fact that the game had to be pleasantly frustrating. That implies that even after the correct solution for each card is known because players have played it multiple times, but they could still have an equal opportunity of winning because of the action cards that have been introduced in the game. It gives players the opportunity to swap cards from the cards that have already been played, play 2 actions in a row, stop a particular card from being put in an artifact unless they want them to be, and also randomly pick from another player's cards. This makes the game challenging enough that players have to be strategically involved at every step, but not too difficult that they're not onboarded properly and want to come back to it again. It also enhances and elevates the gameplay and increases replayability for the game. Lastly, we have situated meetings. Since the game assumes zero knowledge on part of its players, it was important to have something that helped them learn these unfamiliar names and states and territories like we see in the location category, but also different kinds of ideas and materials in industry-specific jargon through association. And this happens because players are just learning things as they go in part of the game, which is part of the game experience and nothing more. I hope this game can become a bridge between creators and consumers at the end of the day, because these making processes are so intricate, yet so distant from the people who actually consume them because of the realities of the capitalistic structures we exist in. But making the process of exploring the creators and what they create more fascinating for the consumers could help close in those distances. And that's why I hope that this game continues to be iterated upon and expanded and also exists in different editions, because at the end of the day, it's about letting people enjoy the art of making as an art in itself. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shristi, for your presentation. For those of you who are joining us, we are in the Games and Society panel. We are going to be hearing from 4 students. One student won't be presenting. Our next student is Jenny Ju. So after I drop my screen, I will ask Jenny to share her screen and begin her presentation. Thanks so much, Jenny. And thank you, Shristi.
Right. Hello, I'm Jenny, and today I'll be telling you all about FoodWell, which helps low-income immigrants combat food insecurity. FoodWell is a mobile app that helps low-income immigrants obtain free and affordable food by crowdsourcing information about food deals and giveaways. I was inspired by my own background as a child immigrant to the United States. I grew up watching my mom juggle her role as a single parent, student, and provider for our family, as she sometimes struggled to put food on the table. And it's difficult to prioritize limited financial resources between necessities that are all essential to a healthy well-being, such as rent, healthcare, and food. And I'm motivated to help other immigrants alleviate some burdens off their shoulders by helping them combat food insecurity. So what is food insecurity? The USDA defines it as a lack of consistent access to enough food for every person in a household to live an active, healthy life. And there are 3 pillars that make up food security: availability, access, and utilization. Availability refers to the overall abundance of food. There are plenty of food in this world, but that doesn't guarantee that people will receive them. Access refers to people's ability to obtain those foods through adequate finances and other resources. And then utilization refers to how the foods meet nutrition needs and having knowledge of how to prepare the foods. To further understand how food insecurity impacts the immigrant community, I volunteered at a weekly food shelter in Flushing, New York for 2 months. I conducted interviews with immigrants while they waited in line to pick up food. And some questions I asked them include, how long have you been in the US? How big is your household? How did you hear about this pantry? Where else do you go to get food? And how do you feel about the food you receive from these pantries? My research led to 3 main insights. The first is that food pantries are unable to meet the demands of the community. I've noticed that people always get turned away after waiting in line for a long time because there's simply not enough supply at the pantries. The second is that getting food at the pantry requires a large time commitment. Most people wait in line were elderly members of the family because working members don't have time to come wait for hours on a weekday morning. And the third is that people like helping each other out. A lot of people heard about the pantry from friends and neighbors. There are 3 main precedents that inspired FoodWell's features: Too Good to Go, Citizen, and Nextdoor. Too Good to Go is an app that reduces food waste by enabling bakeries, grocery stores, and other food-related businesses to sell their surplus food at a discounted price to customers, usually in the form of surprise bags. FoodWell is inspired by the mission and business model behind this platform and creates a marketplace where businesses can donate food for free or list them at a low price to customers. And instead of surprise bags, the food will be individually listed so the immigrants can choose exactly what they receive. The Nextdoor is a neighborhood-based social networking app that allows residents to exchange information such as community events, services, business recommendations, etc. FoodWell harnesses the collective knowledge of the community and combines it with the social networking aspect of Nextdoor to enable immigrants to share tips and information with the rest of the community. And then Citizen is a mobile app that sends users safety alerts in real time. It has a color-coded map interface that shows users where they are in relation to dangerous events. And this concept inspired the map interface in FoodWell that shows the type of posts in different colored dots. So 3 rounds of user testing and 4 iterations later, I ended up with the current design. The app is centered around this map interface. The dots represent the location of food, and the colors represent different types of posts. Green represent posts made by the community, and blue represents reservable items posted by businesses. A red ring represents items that are in low stock. From this map interface, users can search for items at the top, make posts through the floating button in the bottom right corner, and then access their profile through the icon on the right side of the search bar. There are three types of posts users might see on the app. The first are reservable items posted by businesses. From the screen, users can see the price of the item, locations, pickup time, what business is posted by, with an option to follow them, and also item details. The second type are community events, such as a community potluck as shown here, and the color code is indicated at the top of the page. Similar to the reservable items, user can also see price, location, time, who is posted by, which in this case, it's a nonprofit community organization, and also event details. Users can directly RSVP from this page. The third type are community tips, which are posted by individuals in the community. In this case, someone heard about a new food pantry in the neighborhood and post about it to tell other members in the community. Another example is if I saw a discounted item or any good deals at the supermarket, I can also post about it on here. And at the bottom of the page is a comment section where users can ask questions or provide updated information. When users reserve an item, they'll be prompted to select the quantity of items along with information about how to pick it up. And once the items have been reserved, it'll show a confirmation page and a reminder to cancel if they can't make it. From there, users can proceed to view reservation details. Users can easily make community posts by clicking on the floating button in the map interface. From here, they can upload images and input other information such as location, price, category, and details. After filling out the form, they'll receive confirmation that the post was successful, and it will thank them for sharing with the community. And that is all. Thank you so much for listening.
Great. Thank you, Jenny and Shristi. I now invite Paolo to ask questions, make comments, and connect your projects around the theme. Thanks so much for joining us today, Paolo.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for having me, and amazing projects already. Like, we are up to a great start. Should I just maybe ask a question for one of each of the project? Yeah,
sure. Thanks.
Yeah, I should start with Craft Collect, I guess. Yeah. I love the idea of nonfiction card game. I don't think I've ever seen a card game with actual living people portrayed in it. I think it's exciting and great. And I wish my students had the chance and the interest in actually going and doing research every time they come up with a game. So this is amazing. I wish I could do that. Yeah, but so this seems also fantastic experiences as a process, and in the very Eurocentric, fantasy-inspired, world of board games. It's also great to have something that is so specific and definitely not European. I guess I have and also the other thing that I really like is that you're sort of working on crafting and making it talking about crafting in a way that is not the reductionist way, crafting existing games and board games that is about, oh, here's a stick, here's another stick, and now I have a sword or something. Like the idea that there are materials, there are processes, and these processes are kind of grounded with actual people and actual locations. I think this is really exciting. I also understand what you're saying about materiality, and almost makes me think made me start to fantasize what would be maybe a board game that is that has this craft incorporated in the pieces, because that's to me the really interesting part of board games, that you can have other materials other than paper if you're not too concerned about cost or mass production. But yeah, I was wondering, does the game have, do you imagine it having a replayability? Because I couldn't quite see how it plays out, but do you imagine people playing it multiple times?
Mm-hmm.
And the another question that is maybe a bit more sharper is like having a particular craft attached to a particular location. Isn't there a risk that is sort of like crystallizes that culture and sort of like turns it into something that is like appears immutable and non-fluid and sort of like kind of like inscribing it in that particular area that maybe is the birthplace or maybe it's the place of the world that is the most famous for. But I'm wondering if the location might contribute to kind of like almost stiffening the idea of culture and craft.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments. And I think the replayability factor was one of the bigger design challenges, because what do you do once you've played it a bunch of times and figured out the correct solutions for each? And I think at that stage is when I introduced the action cards, because what I realized is that, like many other card games, like poker or any other that has like an order associated with it, people bring in diversity or engaging like diverse mechanisms through different kinds of actions that they can perform. So just because someone knows the correct order of an object doesn't mean that in the next round, they might necessarily have the cards to play that order, because somebody could have played an action card that takes those cards away from them. So that the competitive nature of the game makes sure that people are trying to build these crafts and understanding the processes, but also kind of making sure that other people don't get there before them. And with regards to the question about the location adding stiffness, one of the most, a lot of these crafts are actually situated and named after the location they're in. So for instance, the pottery that I spoke of, the material that you need to make the pots is only found in one specific village in the entire country, and it's only made in that particular area. So in that case, I think the location and concretizing it really matters, because then people know that it exists, and then they'll always know that this is the birthplace of this. And I think that contributes to the entire nature of the game, to at least know something when you leave it instead of knowing nothing about something was made. And overall, the way that the games get played, I found through the playtesting and a lot of the comments that the playtesters made was that, yes, it's educational, but every time they played it, they focused on a different card. And that made it possible for them to learn something new each time. So there is a possibility for giving one particular answer, not stopping the learning process once all the solutions are known, because you're kind of learning something new every time you focus your attention on a different card at a different time of play.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thank you for the answer. Yeah, and I also think that the scope of that being somewhat limited and kind of like it's a very focused game. Like it feels like because of that scope, players will actually be forced to learn about this crafts that are not just the flavor for a mechanic, right? So like I'm sure I will learn something more and something relevant about this crafts. Yeah, so great job. So moving to should I move to the other one, David? Yeah.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry if I don't put them in relationship with each other. I think like what really like the thing that strikes me the most about both of them is that you both had to do like field testing and field research and talk to actual humans, which is something that game designers rarely do. Like if they do interact with humans, they're usually play testers. So you have a product and you're sort of like figuring out if it works, but not so much as research. So so regarding the Foodwell, I'm also, like I admit you sort of like won me over, because I'm always a bit skeptical when there's like an app that solves a problem, and there's problems that are so like systemic, like food security and so on. But in this case, I think because you're dealing with logistics and dealing with like a market of like superfluous, surplus items, I can totally see the app doing the app things, and also the real timiness of it. Like a supermarket doesn't know, the amount of surplus food they will have at the end of the day, and the food pantry, and might not know how many people will show up, and so on. So that I can totally see like the app sort of like taking from this, kind of like Uber like apps, sort of like that lesson in transferring it for something that is non-commodified, but still is essentially a marketplace. So I think it's exciting, and the other thing that I think is super exciting and makes it less of maybe like a speculative project and something that could be totally realized is the fact that it doesn't need a critical mass of users to actually work. It's so hard. Like there are so many apps, so many startups that are just trying to do something and just like they never really reach the viral sort of like snowballing critical mass of user that you need for it to work. But I think in this case, because it's so hyper local, you can like easily sort of like test it and deploy it in a neighborhood sort of like scale, and so like kind of like put effort in making sure that everybody in that area and since you kind of know who is supposed to use it, like, so you can totally see it actually existing in the world. And it's one of those things that even if it exists in one neighborhood, it will still like be good, for the one. So one question will be like, I understand the relationship with your biography and the desire to support immigrant communities, but I was wondering, like, why do you frame this app for immigrants as opposed to just general low-income people that happen to be in that particular area? So that's one question, and the other one is what are your thoughts about essentially the issue of data entry? It seems that you're asking the user to do kind of like a lot of like micromanaging. Oh, there's this particular food item and this grocery store needs to sort of like constantly restock the database with these things. And to me, that seems probably the part with most friction. I can see, the end user. I can see like companies, businesses willing to participate in that program. But I think the labor of sort of like populating this database and keeping it updated, it seems like the biggest challenge to me. So those are my two kind of like questions.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. To answer your first question about why I framed it for immigrants, my research showed that a lot of immigrants don't receive as much aid as, I guess, low-income Americans do, either for reasons like legal reasons they don't qualify, or people that do qualify, they're afraid to enroll because they think it might impact their legalization efforts. And so that's why I kind of framed it for immigrants. And then to answer your second question about data entry, I think that's a really great point. And that's something I thought about a lot during this project. And I can't say I have an exact answer of how to make that part work yet. So right now what I have is more of like a concept of the core features. And there are a lot of other things I'll need to figure out in order to make this actually work, such as, how might a business make a post? How do they manage that data? So yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Great. If you have another question, do we have time for one more question before we move to the next? Otherwise, we can move to the next, Paolo. It's up to you.
I guess the other question I was thinking regarding the Foodwell app is it's almost like why isn't there an app like that already in the world? Like it's hard to research that, right? To see like, was there maybe at some point in time somebody who tried that to do that, and how can you, like, if that didn't work before, like what are you doing different? Because it seems like I don't know, like I can see that there's no like monetary economic incentive to upkeep that or to start that. And maybe like you will need a not for profit type of support. But still, like it seems like there should be some kind of infrastructure like that. And I'm wondering if you looked into why it isn't there.
I don't think I'm aware of anything like that out there, but I think that's a really great point. I think I'll definitely need to do a bit more in-depth research to see like, did it work? Did it not work? And things like that. So thank you so much for that point.
Yeah, because like, yeah, I guess like the data entry aspect, it could be like just, it could be just connected to the inventory systems of, a big distribution chain. So if you have like things like a grocery chain, that I can imagine them sort of like keeping track of the items that granular level, and so see like, okay, these ones are surplus, but yeah, restaurants might be already kind of like tight sort of like a tight kind of business in terms of profit margin. So anyway, yeah, fantastic job, both of you. Yeah, this is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Shristi. Thank you, Jenny, for your presentations. It's great. We will now invite our next two presenters to get ready. And I wanted to, before we do, give a thanks to the organizers of the symposium, Erica Bulger, Apurv Rayate, and Lavannya Suressh. They've been so amazing in organizing all of this. So I wanted to acknowledge their incredible work that they've been doing while they have been trying to finish their thesis. And so it's with great pleasure that I introduce the next two panelists, including Apurv, one of the main organizers of the symposium, who has somehow managed to do this thesis while also organizing this. So I will change the pins and invite Tanvi to present. Thank you so much.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Okay, do I just jump right in?
You're on, thanks.
Okay, perfect. So hello everyone. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me. And today I would like to be talking to you about Tridal. Tridal is a multiplayer collaborative game about land use and climate change. It utilizes the inherent interactivity of video games to empower young adults. I'm Tanvi Mishra, creative technologist and aspiring game maker, and my interests lie in gamified educational experiences. My fixation on land use, however, started a couple of years ago when, as a freshman, I learned that the coastline of India would be unrecognizable by 2050. The idea of not finding my way back home was very nerve-wracking for a college-bound 19-year-old. I wanted to make this game to disseminate not just information, but a desire to change things up. But before we jump into that, what is land use? Land use consists of all land-related activities that result in products or benefits for humans. So think agriculture, factory infrastructure, transportation, etc. And why should we care about land use? I could try to get into the convoluted science of it all, but it boils down to these two facts. Land is a critical carbon sink, and 21% of carbon emissions are due to land use. So not only is mismanaged land a huge problem, but curbing these emissions could inadvertently save us. The land beneath our feet is altering beyond recognition, and we need to talk about it so we can learn how to cope. I believe that a game can help us do so. So how does Tridal work towards making this happen? The game is meant to be three things: multiplayer, collaborative, and browser-based, sort of. And why these three things? I knew I wanted to build a video game from the start, and I knew I wanted it to be about climate change. And I thought that making it multiplayer would make it more compelling. But then I stumbled upon a study that said that social components, things like multiplayer modes, leaderboards, or even like sharing capabilities in climate games are one of the rarest attributes. And I realized then that the climate game space just would benefit from more multiplayer games where people can support one another through the complicated realities these game systems have mechanized. So once I got this idea, I went down a rabbit hole of like never-ending research. And it got to a point where I had to just put pen to paper and make something. And I almost arbitrarily stumbled upon forest transition theory. And I took a lot of the variables from a paper I read about it, forests, urban spaces, farms, soil, and I built a board game using it. And a couple of my immediate findings from the board game were that the board game often had a really emotional impact on players, and strategies of care quickly became apparent. However, there was also a gross simplification of the land use into like simple integers and integer-based transactions. So then to remove this flattening of the data, I returned back to the computer and to video games. As I transitioned to building a browser-based game, I turned to the Food and Agriculture Organization at UN. They have a great resource with tons of data, and that became foundational to my following prototype. Now, I'd like to take you through some of the game features of the current version of Tridal. The game is built using Socket.io, so it's multiplayer and browser run, and I've almost exclusively worked in JavaScript. And if you can't tell already, I really enjoy maps. And so every time each new game is a new map, and each map consists of 5 islands. All of the islands are made up of 6 different land types, which are urban land, croplands, meadows, primary forests, planted forests, and barren land. And again, I'm getting all of this information from FASTAT databases. The players are given access to one of the 5 lands, and they can click on it to learn about the affordances of the land. Each land has a specific land type, carbon biostock, and carbon storage capacities. Then the player can start to transform the land by clicking and changing them around. But what would prompt players to make these transformations? Well, that kind of brings me to like the goal of the game, which is to accommodate growing populations till 2050. So population growth equals increased need for urban spaces. And as players add these urban spaces, carbon emissions increase. This has a trickle effect and increases temperatures of the game. Once temperatures reach a certain threshold, the sea levels rise, thereby also reducing the amount of area the players have to play on. All the islands have different altitudes, so like the water rising affects all of the islands a little bit differently. But water basically forms a ticking time bomb in this game. Just to take a step back, if all of the numbers and the never-ending climate disasters don't scare you about the future, I envy you, because it terrified me. And I'm really not the only person. There was a study in the Lancet showing that there's an increased rise in eco-anxiety among young adults, and young people on university campuses especially don't have the right resources and are overwhelmed by future uncertainties. By giving players some agency over their own pixel land, I was hoping that it would help them contend with the real world, allowing them to put more thought behind their actions and act on their thoughts. Just to drive the point home, I wanted to make a game about land use because it can often be sidelined, and changing the way we use land is crucial to not lose countless more interwoven systems. If our games can inform how we tackle crisis, what kinds of games should we be building? I want to believe that a collaborative, nurturing, and resourceful game about careful land use could actually be the thing that saves us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanvi. Beautiful presentation.
Thank you so much.
And now I'll invite the next presenter to join us and a key figure behind this symposium.
Thank you, David. Let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. I'm Apurv, and I'm going to be presenting a collection of endless games set in a future faced by mass space exodus. And it is titled, We Became Something Else. So hello, I'm Apurv. I'm a creative technologist and a game developer. I'm interested in the future and the myriad forms it can take through design. And I've been wearing different hats at my time over here in my time at Parsons. And I'm excited to show you what I've been developing for my thesis. So first, I want to give some background on how this project started. 2021 was a historic year for space travel. Prices to book a flight to outer space range from Virgin Galactic's suborbital joyride, which is like $450K, to SpaceX's vacation to space station for $55 million. People have already booked these trips, and even more money has been spent attempting to bring them to life. So what is a space exodus? A space exodus is a mass emigration of the humans on Earth to other planets in space. And this can be due to various reasons, most likely due to climate change, but also other factors such as a lack of resources, increasing population, and decreasing landmass. Why is it possible? Reports issued by Morgan Stanley and Bank of America state that the value of the space industry is going to be around 1 trillion by 2040 and almost 3 trillion by the mid-century. As the resources on the Earth are going to become more and more scarce, commercial businesses are expected to find alternatives for those from space and by mining different planets. So let's get into the games. The first game is titled Remains, and it is an endless narrative game about people left behind on Earth. The second game is titled Symbiote, and it is an endless exploration game about people changed by life on another planet. So let's first have a look at Remains. Remains imagines the lives of people unable to afford space travel, left behind on a declining Earth. They receive messages from a colony established in space through a comm robot. So this is how the game loop works. You play as the comm robot, Skybot, which is this. You receive a message from the comm center on the planet Aurelian for a specific person on Earth. You jump around the city talking to different people. Once you've had a few conversations, you will end up realizing that the people are giving you hints as to where to find the person you're seeking. You end up finding the person you're seeking and provide the message to them. You can also trade objects with these people for other objects or information about the person you're seeking. And this loop repeats endlessly. So this is primarily a dialogue-based game, and the dialogue is a very key aspect of the gameplay. As you play more and more, you will realize that the dialogue is procedural, and it is also generated with the help of the ChatGPT API. However, the dialogue is also built upon a Madlib-like system that takes the AI-generated text and combines it with custom text to reconfigure its tone to suit the game. There are 6 different dialogue types in this game. Messages from Aurelian to Earth, messages from people on Earth to Skybot, and these take the form of expecting messages, trading information about the Aurelian message recipient, trading objects, trading wistful stories, and dismissals. Remains is inspired by the fact that migration caused by environmental collapse is going to leave people without power in the dust. So let's move on to Symbiote. Symbiote imagines the lives of people on the planet Aurelion and how their bodies have changed as a consequence of living in an alien environment. So let me take you through the game loop of this game. You play as a person from Earth who has newly started exploring this new planet. You jump around the environment, finding and eating the different food available, and you realize that there's a tree that is growing on your body. The more you eat, the further the tree grows until it leaves you unable to move. At this point, the game resets and you begin your exploration journey again. This loop also repeats endlessly. The tree in this case is generated procedurally using a custom digger and particle algorithm. It creates itself as the game progresses and is affected by the food the player consumes. Thus, each tree is a one-off thing and entirely unique to the game. So every time you play the game again and again, the tree that is generated is also going to be very different. There are 10 different food types in the game, and based on what food you eat, the way your tree grows changes. And they are listed here. Symbiote is inspired by the fact that environmental collapse is going to change our bodies in unexpected ways, and we are in no way prepared to deal with this. Why multiple games? I think the emphasis on endlessness and procedural generation was really motivated by the fact that there is so much anxiety that I feel about the future, and the future can change very easily without me having any power over it. Let's come back to this slide. We can look at the numbers and the different amounts of money being spent on trying to reach space and monetizing space. However, there is a clear imbalance in power that will be exacerbated by the deteriorating environmental conditions. This brings me back to this quote that I remember seeing first. Today, it can feel like things are happening too fast, so fast that it can become really difficult for us to form an understanding of our place in history. It creates an overwhelming sense of uncertainty and anxiety, and so we let the future just happen to us. We don't connect with that future us. We treat our future selves as a stranger and the future as a foreign land. It's not a foreign land, it's unfolding right in front of us, continually being shaped by our actions. So these games are meant to be wallowing games. Can games become a space to entirely disconnect ourselves from our everyday anxiety and also be a way to think about the future? How do we equip ourselves for an unstable future when most of us are simply going to be feeling its shockwaves? Thanks, and that's it for my presentation.
Thank you so much. And now we'll turn it over to the discussion.
Yeah, amazing work again. Yeah, Tridal, I love to hear I love to hear about the process and also like the whole journey from board game and sort of like recognizing the limitation of a small abstract system, and you sort of like see that what you're gaining and losing, that you have a much richer procedural system, but you're sort of like losing the tactility. That seemed like a pretty fun and game to physically touch, and I'm a bit sad that that's gone, but I can totally see like the multiplayer online aspects of it. I think it also seems very technically impressive. I'm really into that. I kind of want to play, and I hope it's going to be out there, or it's already out there, because I'm definitely going to check it. And I also think like, the consideration of like what is supposed to do here in the world right now, I'm totally in line with that. The idea that we are well past raising awareness of the problem of global warming or climate change. Everybody is sort of like aware of that, and that already is creating massive anxiety in at least the new generations, but also I think the older generation, like myself. So it's not so much about raising awareness of the problem, more about raising awareness of the solutions or the various ways we can tackle that. And land use or recognizing land use as a part of 20% of climate change or more, like 28. That is super important and it's never talked about. I recently made a little game about energy transition, and I realized, okay, this is a very big slice of emissions that I cannot even fit in my game, and I have to just refer to it, but I recognize it as a shortcoming of my own game. So that's great that there is a game that is specifically on that. My two questions are, how do you combine, I'm kind of want to hear more about how do you combine the database aspect of it? You say that you went and get some data from the FAO, from the United Nations, and the generative aspects. To me, it's I cannot wrap my mind around it. It's either it's based on data or it's kind of generated procedurally. And the other thing I just would like to know is, tell me a bit more about the gameplay, the interaction, the multiplayer interaction. It wasn't super clear to me what you end up doing and how this forest regeneration process is unfolding in front of your eyes. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the first thing with the land use and the procedurality, this was something I had to contend with at the beginning, because I wanted to use real world data, but I didn't want it to look and feel like the real world. I wanted it to feel a little bit removed, where you don't come into it with bias and you don't visualize your anxieties almost. I wanted to create something that looked like a new map. And so to do that, basically, I've used the quantities of all of the land. So it's the correct amount of the correct percentages of the different land forms, but it's just shaped differently. So that's how I created it's still our land data, but it's in a completely different form. And so obviously this is not a true representation, and these changes are not exact, and this isn't a simulation by any means, but I think it sort of tries to mimic a little bit of what's going on.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I also like the explanation is you don't necessarily want to have people staring at their own countries being flooded, or having some kind of projection of oh well, I guess this is a problem with the Pacific Islands nation, and not so much about me in Pennsylvania. I'm good. I made the right choice. Yeah. So I definitely appreciate that.
And then for your second question, so basically the multiplayer aspect is that every player has their own island. And so they talk to each other and all of their goals are common, but they all have their own isolated spaces to work on. And that was for both just technical reasons, and also because I thought that it would be good for them to have their own spaces, but to work towards a common goal. And so basically what happens is they all have different lands, and they all have higher percentages or lower percentages of specific land types. And some of the lands are more low-lying. And so what would often happen is as they're playing it, suddenly one person would lose a lot of their urban area. And then the other people have to step in and place the urban area in their own spaces and accommodate those. So that's the multiplayer aspect, but it's basically a very simple, you click on all of the land and you just change it to a different land. And then there's a cascading effect of calculations that happen following that.
Mm-hmm. So it's also kind of on basically climate refugees. People will get their urban habitat submerged and destroyed, and so you have to figure out where these people will have to migrate. Okay, cool. Really, really interesting. Mm-hmm. And okay. So I'm gonna ask a question to Apurv as well. That's an interesting one because, in a way, I'm very close to that way of operating. That is a bit seems more of an artist game of some sort, as politically engaged and related to very current issues. But it's a bit more fantastical, and I do like that approach so much. And on the other hand, is the space exodus and the sci-fi narrative of the people left behind is something that I'm struggling to care about as a direct concern, because in part it seems to so far in the future, and in part I'm like I'm sort of like making a sci-fi game, right, in which some rich people live Earth and initiate an exodus, but people are kind of happy. The people who are staying here are kind of like glad that the billionaires sort of like got the heck out of Earth, right? So that's I guess like my provocation, but to me, but also this is to not necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be a practical concern, because to me all science fiction is not so much a prediction but more of like a way to talk about the present. And so essentially to me this speaks more of basically like disparities and environmental injustice, essentially. So that I can totally see as a very rich metaphor and very rich way to think about how climate will essentially like affect people in different ways, whether or not there are spaceships sort of like flying away. So I'm really interested. The two questions I have. One is more conceptual. Like I like the idea of an endless game that has endless loop and a bit more of a circular time. And what do you imagine the motivation to play or to keep playing could be in both of the games? Because I sometimes found like when I both play and make games that don't have a very specific goal, so that people are like almost panicking, or sometimes are even like getting a sense of cynicism, or like that nothing will change. And so like it's almost like an existentialist thing that you're stuck in this game that never really progresses and evolves or has a resolution. So how do you fight that sort of like aspect of nihilism or almost desperation in the circular time, or lack of progression? And the other one is perhaps a bit more technical. Like I'm interested in the use of ChatGPT, because it's still something everybody's sort of like wrapping their heads around, and it seems they are like very clearly sort of like directing ChatGPT and not just like prompting random conversation, because nobody really wants to have conversation with a chatbot everywhere. But how do you essentially like guide ChatGPT into something that is meaningful for this world, essentially?
Yeah, I can answer both of those. I think for the first one, I think like I was trying to use procedurality as a tool to keep things interesting, like because every game is slightly different from the previous one. I was trying to like have people play it again and again. But I think for me also the goal was not for people to keep playing it again and again, but for them to have the option to do so. Because like I think that's also the reason why it's a story loop, and then that loop repeats, because like the idea that I'm trying to convey gets conveyed in the first story loop. So you get the general synopsis, but then if you feel like you want to explore either the generative system or just the idea even more, then you can keep playing the game. That was kind of the intention behind doing it that way. But yeah, I think for me, the main motivation would probably be procedurality at this point, and just like trying to build like a different kind of tree. I think that was the most interesting aspect to most people. Like people who tried playing the game like really liked the trees and like wanted to do like another tree. I think for the dialogue one, it was a bit different, because like chatting with ChatGPT, it almost seems like you're in control and like you can direct the conversation in specific ways. But when it's in a game form, like you are going to get a very specific response. So you have to kind of manage that disappointment of like not getting necessarily the responses or the stuff that you wanted to say. In terms of your second question on how I ended up connecting and like making sure that like the tone is also perfect, there was a lot of like human-based curation involved. Like I felt like it was almost like more work to end up integrating ChatGPT than like writing the dialogue myself, because like I was trying to get it to like speak in a certain way and like use certain words and be emotional, but I could not end up doing that. So I took like the different dialogue that it was generating and like removed certain phrases that like ended up getting repeated, added some of my own phrases, and like it became like a Mad Lib sort of thing where there are some phrases that I have ended up putting in, and there are some phrases that like was from the original ChatGPT dialogue. I actually wrote an article about this process in the publication for this year, so I'm going to link that in the chat as well if you feel like you want to know more about it.
Yeah, I love to look into that. So it's not basically, you're not connected to the APIs themselves. You just use it as a pre-production and then the text is static. Okay.
Yes. So it's basically like a way to generate like a database of like endless dialogue.
Yeah. So you can have more control. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, no, that's great, because to me, this is another interesting use, especially what you were saying about the procedural generation. It's another idea of procedural generation. It is like much more thoughtful than how it's usually conceived in the industry, that is in the game industry, you know, like, oh, we can procedurally generate things, and so everything can be bigger and cheaper, or like we don't have to, you know, get as many handcrafted, expensive, artists and things like that. But I think that's like a very uninteresting way to see procedural, to use procedural generation. And I'm much more interested in more like conceptual ways. It was like, I'm generating these islands, so they have this expressive aspects to it, or like I'm avoiding this problem, or I'm solving a problem through this procedural generation. In the same way, you seem to be talking about it's not so much that you want the player to play forever and explore forever, but more like this sense and the vibe that there is this space of possibility out there that is sort of like humbling, and there is a universe that is kind of like indifferent to you in a way, is already in itself an expressive goal. And it kind of like reminds me of, like No Man's Sky, which is you're not going to explore all, like thousands and thousands of planets. Like most player probably will explore like a handful of them, a dozen of them. But the fact that that the universe is there sort of like makes you, think about the finitude and how small you are, and how these planets are not there just for you to explore, but they exist in their own terms because they are generated by numbers or nature, essentially. So that's I think these two projects are very exciting and related to each other in that. David, tell me how much time we have.
We are out of time, so
Okay.
I wanted to thank you and thank our 4 presenters. That would be Shristi, Jenny, Tanvi, and Apurv. Thank you so much for this exciting and wonderful panel on games and society, and congratulations to the presenters. We're now going to change over to our next panel on creative tech. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Wonderful work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So everyone, please stand by while we make the changeover to the next panel. Okay, so let me introduce our next panel at this time. Hello, everyone. You are joining now the Creative Technology panel at the MFA and BFA Design and Technology Streaming Symposium. The theme of this year's symposium is Entropy. And I am going to introduce our guest moderator, and then we will begin 4 presentations on the subject. So let me now pin our presenters and moderators. So we would like to first introduce our guest moderator. Aarati Akkapeddi is a Telugu American multidisciplinary artist, coder, and educator based in Lenapehoking, that's Brooklyn, New York. They use family and archival photographs as source material, combining code-based and analog techniques, photography and printmaking, to create artwork about intergenerational and collective memory. Their work has been supported by institutions such as AdaX, the Interactive Telecommunications Program at NYU, Etopia Center for Art and Technology, Photo Museum, Winterthur, and LES Print Shop. The Creative Technology panel is focused on the practice of using technology in unexpected ways for interdisciplinary pursuits. Students in this category combine computing, design, art, and the humanities in projects involving hardware, sensations, texture, experience, and emotions. The first student that will be presenting today is not here at the moment, so I am going to skip ahead and invite Yiping to be our first presenter. Go ahead and share your screen and begin your presentation, and hopefully the others will be here shortly. Thanks so much for joining us, and if you're here on the stream, please feel free to share the YouTube URL and use the hashtag Entropy so people can enjoy these wonderful presentations today.
Okay, thank you. So I'm probably going to take over and start, and just let me figure out sharing my screen. Where is my screen? Okay. So, so can everybody see my screen okay?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so hello everyone, and I'm Yiping, and I'm going to be presenting my project Non-Sighted. So at the beginning, I'm going to introduce a little about myself. I'm a BFA DT from the Creative Technology track. I focus a lot on usability and accessibility design, and I like craft making and book making, also printmaking, and so that leads to my project Non-Sighted. It is an immersive experience. It's on the topic of loss of sight, physicality of things, and feeling the world. So I'm going to be presenting more of the research side in this symposium panel, but I'm also going to just show a little bit from my project, or from the physical things. But the installation is never set up formally before, so I can't tell as much about it. But I'm going to for sure talk about all the thought process I've been through and conceptual things that lead to my idea and my project. So my inspirations. I first got into the topic of losing sight because of a novel, but I never thought about it until last summer, because my aunt got an eye surgery and there were 2 weeks that she had to cover her eyes. I started to seriously imagine what life would be like if I couldn't see. So my aunt has been talking about how she will just simply be blind one day before she got her surgery, for a long time. And I didn't like hearing that at all. And I pray that will never happen to her or to me. However, through the process of me learning more about non-sighted individuals, I started to feel it is not that unacceptable. I tried for the first time to enter my bathroom at night and fully close the door, so there won't be any bit of light in. I found that I can still use the bathroom without any problem. And then I tried to wash my hands and as well in the dark, and I didn't knock anything over. A few days later, I heard about a cousin who is in her 30s. And she is also talking about how she thinks she will just turn blind one day because of the genetic things in the family. And she thinks her loved one will take care of her nicely. And I was really moved at the point and hope that will be true if that ever gets to that point. I still wish that I won't turn blind one day, but instead of thinking about it as having a terrible effect on my life, I think about it as learning more about the world with a different aspect. The world is also beautiful without vision, through sound, smell, texture, and feeling. There are so many things I don't pay attention to because I can see, but when I close my eyes, I can hear the wind, smell the water, and feel the love around me. So some key ideas of this project, this installation, is senses of body, use of imagination, and some environmental design. And I want to deliver a cozy and warm feeling to all the audience through this setup. And some materials I used, this is a condensed version of them in the binder. I'm also holding it here right in my hand. It has like acrylic, wood, also like real, like, and some like felt laces, some real wallpaper samples, and like fabric swatches, like crochet, like blanket and stuff. It's like all those things that has like a typical feeling to them. And they also deliver a typical like sense to everybody. For example, when somebody touched a cozy, nice little crocheted handmade blanket, I believe everybody will feel a lot of warmth or a lot of love in it. So I set up this environment. It's a miniature room that I made with all completely real material in the swatches you saw before. And I try to make it small and cozy. Everything is as realistic as possible with real materials. The cabinet also actually moves. And it's just kind of trying to deliver the sense of it is relatable to everybody, especially in this New York setup of everybody has a little tiny room. And but it is like some sort of really warm and cozy feelings that everybody will love and enjoy. So for my research, during the process of working on my thesis, I researched a lot on accessibility design and products of blind and products that are made for blind. I learned how Braille and the white chain works, and I found out there are way more people who are working on to help the blind community. There is a software that helps them to see the world, and there are also games designed for non-sighted people. There are also games that everyone plays, like Hearthstone, that have really good accessibility design. And there are also players developing plugins to help blind individuals to play it, just as everybody else play. And there's also some softwares where apps like Be My Eyes, it helps blind individuals read the surrounding. It was by volunteers, but now they involved AI, especially recently ChatGPT, and we all know how strong it is. It is like a kind of like reads what is in front of them while the blind individual hold their phone up, and it will repeat or tell them what is in front of them, if they should avoid it or anything. So what we can do as designers, or like as designers, accessibility design might not be the main focus of every designer, but there are tiny things every designer can do to help non-sighted individuals. For example, we should all add clear alt text to our website and run through some accessibility tests for color and font sizes. And obviously not only for websites, as well as you design graphic design or when you do printmaking or whatever, accessibility tests always going to be helpful for people who has visual problem. So I'm going to wrap up my presentation with this quote from Helen Keller. There is no better way to thank God for your side than by giving a helping hand to someone in the dark. Thank you all.
Thank you, Yiping. Thank you so much for your presentation. I will now invite Ian to make the next presentation.
Hello. Let me. It's working.
And while Ian's getting set up, after Ian presents, we will have a break for moderator response, and then we'll hopefully see 2 more presentations and another break for moderator response.
Okay. Can you see it?
Looks good.
Looks good. Okay, good. Okay, well, my name is Ian, BFA. And yeah, so for my thesis, I started out with the main question, which is there a way that I can disassociate or soothe the viewer's negative preconceptions of death in an abstract way? That was immediately when just searching for an idea, I was like, death. Okay, how can we make it not scary or just show it in a way that may help some people? That was mainly the goal. It's so disassociate negative feelings towards death. So background about me and why death. Well, basically I'm from Mexico, and there we have Day of Death in October, and it's a celebration that death should be embraced rather than fear. It is time to honor memories of those who have passed away and to celebrate the richness of life, basically. So you just, instead of seeing death as a negative thing, even though it's still sad, we try to approach it with a positive way and celebrate the life of a person rather than the passing of the person. So because of this, I feel like I have a unique view towards death, and I wanted to share that. So for my research inspiration, I was trying to find a way on how could I talk about death or how to make it. You can see here this painter, for example, who shows death in a very happy way. I was very inspired by projection mapping, and also with all these abstract shapes. I was trying to find a way in which I could, mix the two, because the idea for this project is that with Day of the Dead, I'm giving it my own interpretation, but at the end, I want you to judge your own meaning of death to it. And that's why I decided to go the abstract way. So basically, after going through many options, I landed into something called the audio-reactive latent interpolations with Stalgan. This is the first one I saw. I'm gonna play like 2 seconds of it, so you can see how it looks. But it has a very abstract, very colorful way of showing things, and I thought it meant well with my images of Day of the Dead. So the first thing I do is I found a song created by a friend and just tested out if I could make it without my own data set. So both of these are pre-made models. I'm trying to figure out how to make the interpolations, and then I started making my own model. GANs work in the sense that you give it a set of images and tell them that these are fakes, and then you give it a set of real images, and you tell them, okay, this is what I want. I do not want this. So I gave it faces of people for what I didn't want, and for the real images, I chose images of outdoor sugar skulls, flowers, and generally Day of the Dead imagery, but no people. So after making my set and training my own model, I got these results, which, as you can see, the first one still you can see a little bit of images. So I've just started inputting the new outputs into the GAN to create more of this abstract imagery I wanted. And these were the results. I'm just going to play one a little bit. Basically, yeah, these are the type of results I got. I just kept pumping them out, many of them at a time, like many of them, until I got to this. Yeah, basically just started making as many as I could, and then choosing the ones that I felt had the colors that I wanted and looked in an interesting way compared to the other ones. And those are the results. But for my future plans, right now all my images I got from the internet. So in order to expand my big data set, I would I would think it would be cool to ask people for their own personal images of authors and whatnot, and input them into this so I could create more variety. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Yiping, for your presentation. Ian, we noted that sound didn't play through. Did you mean for sound to play through?
Yes.
If
But
you
that's
wanted,
fine.
yeah, if you're during the discussion, if you want to put your screen back on and play a clip just to get a taste of that, it's no problem. We have time. If you would like to just give us a quick sample of what it's like with sound by resharing and then clicking the buttons to clicking
here you go.
the check boxes so your sound goes through.
Yes. Let me do that.
So go. Why don't you give us a sample full screen with the sound so we get a flavor.
Okay, actually, give me 1 second. Let me find my full screen one. Boom. Link. Okay. And boom. Zoom, share screen, and share sound. There you go. Can you see that?
We can see it. Can't hear anything yet. Yep, we hear it. Very good. So why don't you go ahead and play this?
Yes. Yeah, let me know when, because this lasts 12 minutes.
Yeah, you can thank you for giving this that's much more helpful with the sound and the full screen view. So let's open it up to the discussion with our guest moderator, Aarati, to reflect upon both of these wonderful projects. Thanks so much for presenting, and thanks for joining us today all.
Thank you. Congratulations. It's nice to see familiar faces, and yeah, I appreciate you both going first. I guess I'll start with some common threads I saw. It seems like both of you, what I found interesting is that both of you are starting from kind of a personal place, but then sort of grappling with how to then communicate to an audience that may not be coming from that same place. So with Iann, I think, you talked about starting with this idea of Day of the Dead from your own culture, but then also wanting it to be kind of speak to wherever or meet wherever the viewer is coming from as well. And with Yiping, you have a very specific experience, personal experience, with a genetic disposition towards blindness, and thinking about how to communicate those feelings to people that may not have that experience. I think I'll start with some specific notes about Yiping's work first. I thought it was really powerful that you started from a place of approaching this very personal issue from an open mind rather than fear, and that to me felt like kind of the crux of the work, or like kind of the central piece of the work. I'm curious about your turn to accessibility design. I think it's important, and that you've probably learned a lot in terms of being a designer and thinking about accessibility and vision, but I wonder how what you've learned there translates to your installation work, which feels very personal and kind of about communicating, or I guess rediscovering familiarity without sight. So yeah, maybe I'll let you respond to that first.
Yeah, so I think it just kind of like happened naturally in the process, because I have like my installation changed like 5 different times because of like all kind of like pop-up limitation and stuff. So it's like kind of like a natural turn while I'm like researching and digging into what can be discussed on this topic. So it's like I learned on how blind people learn about this world, and also things like how what are things that are important in accessibility design to help blind individuals navigate the world. Also, even for like us sighted people, when we close our eyes, what is the most scary things for us and stuff like that. So I kind of like involve these and translate it into an installation more of on an educational side to kind of like give experience for us who can see experience that is a different aspect or a special aspect, to kind of help everybody to think about this topic of what if you cannot see one day.
Yeah, I think I also wonder about your choice of the setting in an apartment. I don't know, there's something about like choosing a domestic space that also feels very personal to me. I think what I'm getting at is like, I wonder, I think that personal story is really strong in the work, and I feel like should continue to be a part of it. I wonder if there's something there in terms of how you're thinking about the installation, and like, is it your room that you're recreating? And also, if you were to take kind of what you've learned from doing this accessibility design research and think about yourself, like I wonder how, if that's revealed anything to you about how you might live your life, should you face these issues. Does it change how you think about your relationship with your domestic space, which we all like spend so much time in?
Yeah, so I chose the apartment setting because during the research, appear that the most unpredictable or that is most like unsafe, like the situation that deliver the most or the strongest unsafe feelings to non-sighted individuals is when they trying to explore a completely new space that they've never been in. So I designed this kind of like apartment setup, which has all these materials or stuff that everybody's familiar with. But if you ever close your eyes and put you into a room that you've never been into, you're still going to be like so scared of it. So that's kind of like also like this is the same situation for actually like non-sighted people. So that's kind of where the idea of apartment room came from. It is so relatable and so personal to everybody, but since it is a new space, it is also considered scary in a way. So it is this room setup. So actually this could be a little seems wrong or like feeling weird because the installation changed so many versions and I'm like working on the previous versions and stuff. But like I think that part still remains, like this is the core backbone of what is a situation that blinded people that don't want to be in.
Maybe I'll talk about one more thing for your project and then move on to Ian. But I think maybe for next steps, it would be helpful, even outside of the limitations of the pop-up, to try this out in your own room. Like maybe invite someone that's never been to your space and think of like a way to guide them through this experience. And I think you'll learn a lot about what people's reactions are from that. And maybe that could help you fine tune, I guess, your proposal for an exhibition in the future, even beyond the thesis show, right? Okay. So Ian, I was part of your midterm critique, I think, right? So I have some familiarity with your project. And I think in terms of that question that I talked about in the beginning of like how to communicate to your audience and meet them kind of halfway, I'm really excited about this future direction that you mentioned. I think that that's kind of, I see as the resolution to that question of like collectively creating a data set. I think with machine learning, the majority of the work, as you probably are painfully aware by now, is gathering data. And the idea of building a data set collectively building a data set with others in order to collectively think about dealing with death and reshaping our thinking around death seems really powerful to me. I think maybe fleshing out details about how you prompt people to submit, and of course also thinking about issues of how you use their data and communicating that to them in a transparent way. But for example, like, are you asking people to share an image that represents a ritual that they do to remember loved ones? Or I was also thinking about the audio component of your piece and how you could potentially, in addition to music or meditative sounds that you have right now, it could also be a really interesting oral history project where when someone submits a data point or an image for your data set, to also invite them to talk about their loved one or talk about the relationship with death. And that could potentially be part of the audio. I think I also wanted to flag a Radiolab episode called The Queen of Dying that I think might be helpful to listen to. It's about the author of the 5 Stages of Grief. And I think, I really think that it could be interesting, even though you're thinking about abstraction and using machine learning as a tool to sort of abstract the data that you start with. I still feel like if you do choose to create this collective data set, I think it would be worth it to think about whether the data set becomes part of the final work. And this is a very different project, but I'm thinking of Anna Ridler's project around tulips, and the work, there's a part of the work that's the machine learning output, but she also displays the data set that makes it up. And I think that could be really interesting if you are going to continue with this project in a more collective manner. How am I on time?
You're great. We're going great. We have another presentation. So why don't we invite our next presenter, and then there'll be another chance to give feedback, and certainly welcome to bring in Yiping and Iann's projects again after Hong's, if that makes sense for you, Aarati. So let me pin our next presenter and go ahead and take over the screen and fire away. Thanks so much.
Sure, no problem. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Nice. So I'm sharing my screen. Okay, everyone see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Slideshow. Here we go. So hello everyone, my name is Hong. So before my presentation, I would like to briefly introduce myself. So my name is Hong Hua. I'm a designer, technician, and creative technologist. I have background in industrial design and currently focus on creating interactive experience that combine software and hardware, virtual and physical. So if you want to know more about me, you can go to my website, studiohoang.com. So jump into my thesis project. It's called Flexi Dots. It's a wearable electronic prototyping kit. To begin with, I want to introduce like the background why I have the motivation to do this project. So immersive experience is the stuff that we have been exploring in the industry for years. So like we have very advanced headset like Oculus Quest Pro, like HTC XR Elite, and also PlayStation, they launched their own VR headset kind of a month ago. So the mainstream product that is on the market right now is really focused on visual immersion. So we have very good resolution, we have a very good like graphic processing power, and like from that, we also can see like an increasing trend about haptic experience that is always a part that's been missing from this industry. That like Sony PS5 DualSense is kind of a adaptive triggers and actuator that built into the game controllers that it can mimic the physical collision or other physical physics feedback from the digital environment. And also we have more low cost solution like Nintendo Switch Ring Fit. Oh, 1 second, let me move over. Okay, yeah, Ring Fit Adventure is kind of have this physical add-on to the actual controller that gave you like very brand new game experience. So move on to the next slide. So for haptic, there are more specific products that build for haptic immersive haptic interact experience, like existing product like Sense Glove, Haptic Glove, Kinetic Vest. There are gloves and like full body haptic vest, integrated, very extremely expensive, and yeah, it's amazing product. I have tried them before. In the research field, there's more about like exploration, low cost solution, and even more other kind of specific application. Like the first one, Lucid VR Glove, it's a very low cost, open source, 3D printable VR glove that had the same function with the Sense Glove above, but it's more extremely low cost. And also like Tactile Bot is kind of a modular system that explores the emotional robot touch. And also like ONO is a DIY toolkit for designing and rapid prototyping olfactory interfaces that is kind of an add-on to your VR experience that adds the sense of smell to your immersive experience. So it led to a problem space about wearable projects that people like me or other folks in DT, other folks in STEM education, people want to create this kind of cool wearable interactive hardware system with the digital experience. And we often in imagination, we try to create some like prototype, like the left hand one is a prototype from Meta. It's cool, it's neat, it just looks cool. But often the reality is not everyone have the skill set, not only hardware development for physical computing, and also like industrial design for developing ergonomic wearable stuff. So yeah, the reality is we often have a ton of wires, jumper wires, have the pin, have components, tape it on our body or on a piece of fabric to put it on our body. So I want to create kind of a solution that brought in this gap that help people, you know, to create more durable wearable hardware electronic system. So yeah, if you look more into wearable solutions, there is existing products like LilyPad from SparkFun, Flora from Adafruit, this is kind of solution that you use conductive thread. You can stitch the electrical component onto a fabric, then wear it on your body. But that leads to a problem that it's not the case that you can rapidly switch components, debug hardware. So I came up with an alternative solution previously, like a years ago. This modular wearable e-textile mainboard is a shell for a normal ESP32 microcontroller that have this conductive snap system on it. So you can snap your like e-textile sensors, motors onto this mainboard, and then like processing all the data stuff. So building upon that, I further developed this concept, this idea of modularity into this project, FlexiDock. It's a modular electronic toolkit specifically designed for wearable prototyping scenarios, addressing the challenge of creating ergonomic, simplistic, durable wearable electronics. The solution comprises adaptive body attachment and optimized wearing electronic system and software packages. So this is kind of the product structure from the hardware side. Start with human body, and we have body attachment, and we have virus bases that isolate human body with electrical components. And we have microcontrollers, input, output modules, power modules, and then they all kind of built on a wire connection shell that using JST connection standard that make it more durable. If you have any body movement, the pin won't fall off. And from hardware side, we have like software packages. Right now, I'm like developing P5.js examples that can interact with software wirelessly. So we can build like the web-based games with the example. Overall, it will be FlexiDock's website documentation that this entire project is open source, so you can go to the website, download the file, get access to the code, and modify it, build your own experience. And this is an anatomy of FlexiDock hardware system. So you can see there is band underneath, connector, output module, input module, JST wire, microcontroller module, power module, and they're all color coded. So here I want to show you guys a quick demo video that how this entire system works. So we have this two box. One is electronic box, the other one is connector box. So if you open up the first one, you'll see the microcontroller. This is the Arduino Nano 33 BLE Bluetooth low energy model. So for teal color is an output model. This is a vibration motor and a terminal block that you can connect whatever sensor you have. This is like input module in purple. It also have a terminal block and like dual button. And yeah, this is also input and output of one button module and the LED module. This is a 9-volt battery pack. So you can see there's also have like knob on the back, so you can snap on the band. We'll show later. So this is the connector system, JST connector. So you can easily connect to the pin you are specifically look for. Like right now, it's connected to digital pin. So for the connector parts and the band parts, this is a 3D print TPU band. It's flexible. It has the spring structure, so it's gonna very comfortably wear on your human body. And yes, it's pretty like Lego brick, but in a different way. So you can connect the connector. This is like a quick release module that you can quickly clip on, clip off. And then for the electrical modules, like Lego, so you can like snap on to the band and snap on to the band. Yep. So here you got like a very basic module that have a battery pack and power on the microcontroller. Over here, we offer a virus type of connector to fit in different part of body shape. So right now, you can snap on like a 1-inch elastic band and then wear into your head or other part. Cool. So this is like the video. So if you go look at me in the camera right now, I already have this module on my head. So I know it's look a little bit hilarious. But over here, this is the documentation website. It's called FlexiDock. You can, I will have the QR code afterwards. So here you can go through all the technical documentation examples. You can go get started. And then if you have the introduction, if you want to go into like Arduino with P5 examples and go through the component list and some introduction, how you wire up, how you code Arduino, and how you interact with P5. And over here, if you need specific hardware, you can just go to the hardware page to download the file, print by yourself. And over here, I want to show you a kind of application, how we can use this system to build like a very creative, fun experience. So over here, I have this IMU drawing machine. So what's for IMU is basically gyroscope and accelerometer that detect body movement. So this is a little P5 sketch over here. I can go connect the device, and it will show up a device selected.imu drawing machine. This is the device on my head right now. So if I go pair it, when it starts pairing, so it will detect my head's movement, and then yeah, I can go try to draw something over here. This is kind of a very basic example to demonstrate how to incorporate wearable device to sense body movement into a digital environment. And also what's more amazing is that we offer more examples that shows how to communicate between software and hardware, that hardware can control software like this, and also software can communicate with hardware to give commands back. So there's a lot of potential to building more fun, playful experience. Cool. So basically, this is all my presentation. Thank you all for listening. If you're really interested in this product, you can go to scan the first QR code. It's reflected on our website. And if you're more interested about me, you can scan my portfolio in the middle, and welcome to connect me with on LinkedIn through scan the third QR code. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Hong. Thanks for the great presentation. And now we can have commentary. Looks like we lost Ian, but we'll probably focus on Hong, but Yiping's still here, and we'll have commentary for the next 10 minutes. Thanks so much, Aarati.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I have some very specific questions and then maybe some suggestions of places and communities to look into.
For sure.
So I guess one, and you maybe have this somewhere on the website, but I was wondering about, I guess, some way of like having something printable, whether it's like a sticker system or something to kind of help users that may be using this to easily distinguish between the components that you have. Whether it's like, maybe it's an insert that goes into that box that you can print. Yeah, I'm just curious if you already have that.
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat the question? Like the second half of the question. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was curious if you have that already on your website, or if you're thinking about like graphics, like, yeah, I guess graphics around your 3D printed components and helping users understand the differences between them.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I do have like the big 3D print part on my website, but there's right now, it's just listed all the components. It's the ongoing process is building a website, so many details. So there is a lot of like introductions or like tips and the other suggestion how you go and print, or how you get access to, if you don't have a printer, how you get access to other hackerspace, or yeah, to get them print. It's the reason I'm going to be off topic a little bit, but the reason why I choose like 3D printing technology is that 3D print is going to be more and more accessible to general users, and also 3D print is customizable. So we don't need to like order like inject mold, and they must offer like 1 million pieces. So it's like customizable to different users, and they can customize by themselves. So that is why I choose 3D print. And yeah, and there's still a lot of future work to push to finalize the online documentation. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think when you finalize your online documentation, it would be cool to create something that users can print, like not 3D print, but I mean print on a 2D printer.
Oh, you mean on a 2D printer? Oh, now I get to me. Okay. I haven't think about that, but yeah, that is a good suggestion. Yeah.
Cool. And then I have I think it could be interesting now that you're so far along well, one community I think that could be helpful is NYC Resistor. They're a hackerspace in New York. And you can teach classes there. So I could see something where you propose a workshop and then maybe use that workshop to kind of also test like how people interact with, how people are able to use your kit. And
of course, yeah.
And then I also am wondering if you've reached out to anyone from processing, because the fact that you are using P5, I think, yeah, there could be a lot of opportunities to, whether it's like have some sort of event.
Yeah, so yeah, for Processing Foundation, one of my friends brought I'm not personally physically attended the open source art conference, I believe it's like earlier, like 2 months or a month ago. Yeah, but one of my friends brings some prototype over there, and yeah, people do show interest to my project. So yeah, I think next big step is to push my project into the community base to see how other educators, artists, designers use my product into what type of scenarios, and yeah, to further serve the requirements, the needs of the users. Yeah.
Cool. I think I'm so sorry. I think there's an emergency or something. My phone keeps ringing. Just give me 1 second.
No problem.
Sure, no problem. You can definitely go offline. And in fact, Yiping, thanks so much for your presentation today. And also Hong, congrats to both of you for presenting.
Thank you so much.
Yep, and it's great that you've been able to disseminate this discussion, and it's streaming on YouTube, and hopefully in both of your cases, folks may be interested in learning more about your projects. So I think that there's a good chance that we have concluded this panel and then we have covered everything. So it's not a big deal that Aarati had to go. So I want to congratulate both of you and to announce to our streamers that our next panel will begin at 1:03 p.m. Eastern. So not too far away from now. So do stand by. Great time for anyone who needs to take a bio break, etc. So thanks, Hong. Thanks, Yiping. And we will see everyone in a few minutes for our next panel on data. So do stand by for our next panel coming up shortly. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you much. Thank you. Thanks for the audience on YouTube. Yeah. See you.
So I'm going to share my screen to the next panel as we do the changeover. Hey, Aarati, we concluded the panel. Thanks so much for your commentary and participating. We really appreciate you all always. Thanks so much for your sound insights.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me get us ready for the next panel. So in a few minutes, we will be starting our next panel. So I'm just going to put the standby screen up, and we'll get started according to our schedule. If you're streaming, Please stand by. We will begin our next presentation in a few minutes. Do stand by. We'll introduce our new moderator and presenters shortly. So stand by for a few minutes while we await our next panel session. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the Parsons School of Design, Design and Technology, MFA and BFA Streaming Symposium for the class of 2023. The theme of this year's symposium is Entropy. We are celebrating this class's thesis projects with a screening that occurred last night in the auditorium of the Performance and Cinematic Works. Today and on Thursday, we will be streaming our symposium, and a pop-up show opens this evening and the second pop-up show later in the week. Do check our website at parsons.edu/DT-2023 for not only all the information, but also the schedule and links to all the graduating candidates and more information about their products and projects. I look forward to starting our next panel on data in a few minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. Please stand by. Hey everyone, if you are joining us, we are standing by as we await the beginning of our next session in just a couple of minutes here. The next panel of the Parsons Design and Technology Streaming Symposium is a panel on data. And we look forward to the presentation by the graduating candidates in the BFA and MFA Design and Technology class of 2023. Thanks for joining us. And we will begin the next panel shortly. Do return again on Thursday, where we have another full day of panels in a wide-ranging set of topics and guest moderators. Thanks for joining. Just getting our attendees set up here. All right, fantastic. So let me make some introductions now that we are almost ready to begin our next panel. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon for the panel discussion today. Let me start with making some introductions. So first, let me introduce our guest moderator today for the section on data. Omar Nema is a technologist, strategist, and educator. He has a deep fascination for the interplay between data, technology, and the human experience. He received a biomedical engineering degree from Brown University and worked as a data engineer and product manager for 6 years at Arcadia.io before transitioning to an MFA in data visualization at Parsons School of Design. He currently works as a product leader at Datadog in NYC while teaching part-time at Parsons and CUNY. We are so pleased that he's here with us today to intersect the presentations on data, a panel that looks at today's world in which data has become an indispensable part of our daily lives. Projects falling under this category delve into the analysis, gathering, and evaluation of data with a focus on topics such as surveillance, data visualization, and design. And we have the pleasure of presentations by members of the BFA and MFA graduating class of 2023. Our first presenter, Seunghyo, will be invited to present their screen and begin our presentation now. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. We see your screen. Looks good.
Yep. Can you guys all hear me?
Yep, and you sound good too.
Great. Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Seunghyo Jang, MFA student, science student from MFA student from Design and Technology, and my thesis project is about increasing access to 311 services by utilizing chatbot to deliver precise and swift solutions. And for someone who don't know, like who are not familiar with about 311 services, it handles inquiries and provides information on a wide range of non-emergency services and government-related issues. So we're inundated with information from all directions, and it can be overwhelming to find the right solutions to our problems. And when it comes to accessing information about public services, and the problem is even more pronounced. So with so many options and information available, individuals often struggle to find the resources they need. My initial research starts with a question to improving access to 911 because I always felt like I could be a victim one day living in the city and had a doubt whether police could solve it. However, I found that police are dealing with more life-threatening issues, so that I changed the direction of improving access by using 311 services, which deals with issues that I would face more. So first, by analyzing 311 service requests from 2010 to present by New York City Open Data, I found several interesting things that 311 is. First, 311 is operated by 34 different agencies in New York. And also, I was able to see durations of resolutions per issues by calculating created dates and closed dates. And third is that most of the people were using 311 service in order of phone, website, and app. And among them, the people who used services by phone, which was the most, resolved by getting information being transferred to city agency or routed to web page. So people were use the web next to the phone service, and I decided to focus on app. And I wanted to find and see people's experience about current website. So I did user testing to see by asking them to report by current website, giving them a fake scenario of a problem. And people were saying that there were too many categories, and classification criteria more ambiguous, that it was a bit confusing where their problem belongs to. And the last was that the interface doesn't really stand out. So overall, they felt indirect most of the time. So I decided to create a chatbot using the 311 open data records and reflecting interviewed pain points.
And my goal is to ensure that users can instantly and precisely locate the answers among the vast volume of information. So there are two groups of users who are visiting 311 website. Group 1 is who are filing reports. 2 is people who are seeking for information, and probably 3 is for both. So this is the process of filing a report. So this is the main page, and if you click it, you could search issues that you would like to report. So here you're gonna click report a problem, and you're gonna find out which problem you would like to report. So like basically adding personal information and reporting process would be the same as regular chatbot system. And this is how the summary will come out when you write all of your personal information and address of the issues. And if you confirm that all of the information is correct, chatbot will tell you which agency this case will be treated. And if you confirm and submit, and this is the last page, will show like the estimated time calculated based on the open data and the department where the case is covered. Also, it displays the additional information what you could do next. And for searching for information, home menu will be the same. And if you type a topic that you'd like to discuss, there are the news slide of the additional page will gonna pop up on the left side. So if there's information you would like to find out on the left side, it'd be great. But if you say no, if you couldn't find it, then it will give you the additional information of a department so that it could guide you. And last, there's like on other options to see related searches. So through this research, it could provide additional information as well. And like at last, there's and always as the end of if users want to report it, even after looking for information. So like it kind of gives the users the chance of going back, like going to the main menu and report it again. Yeah. So to sum up, to sum up the reporter is informed of a reporting procedure first, and then additional information is given. And for group 2, for the person seeking for information will be provided first, and then report procedure will be given at last. So yeah, this is all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Seunghyo. Appreciate that presentation. Thank you. Now going to invite Lavannya. And then after Lavannya, we'll open it up for discussion.
Can you see my screen?
Looks great.
Awesome. So hi, I'm Lavannya. I'm an MFA Design and Technology student, and my project is about advertising debt, digital journeys of our physical lives. So a lot of our purchases, just like they have their physical journeys from, procurement of raw material to, processing and retail and wholesale and, finally purchasing our products in the market. The products and most of our purchases today have their digital journeys as well. Like that is based on our our presence online and the decisions that we make on the internet. So this is an exploration I'm doing on certain particular topics on digital journeys of our products. So what is a digital journey of a purchase? So first we search for a topic of interest, and you may have an obsession over the internet. It could be anything, and then you have suggested content from to advertisements on the internet, and based on how we respond to this suggested content, we have more suggested content depending on every decision that we make on the internet. So my goals for this project are to break down how we transact this information. How do we understand what we're sharing online, to what's the feedback that we're receiving and how we respond to it, and how we may better understand our presence and be more conscious about our decisions. So one method that I used is to look into a tangible representation of this, to have a board game breaking down cookies as bits of information that you physically transact in order to see what happens as an outcome of it, and demonstrate how social media may manipulate us by showcasing the immediate response to every bit of information that we interact with, which are deliberately concealed and lost. So in a way, it's a method of storytelling and also a kind of interactive narrative experience of a game. The one focus that the game is specifically about is financial health of Gen Z, also known as the TikTok generation, because as far as finances are concerned, Gen Z is burdened by a lot more compared to generations previously, with eco-anxiety, the way we manage money, the way jobs are offered, and a newer consequence of buy now, pay later apps. This is something that predominantly targets Gen Z, and it targets their purchasing power and the latest trends that keep changing very fast. So it looks at convenience and accessibility of items, and the way we phrase these advertisements as, oh, you deserve to treat yourself. Oh, but the thing is, these are actually loans, and it's not called what it is. And it encourages impulsive spending. Like statistics from companies like Klarna show that you're more likely to spend 41% more than you normally would because of the existence of these applications, and combined with targeted advertising, it can potentially be a deadly combination. So looking at the form, so there is a conductive data board, and each of these are cookies that are placed in different parts of the board. And each cookie corresponds to a certain bit of information that you give the system with every decision you make, and you see an outcome of that decision you make on screen. So these are the cookies that are visually identified with the different patterns that they have. And the story, the non-linear storyline that's associated with this that I'm trying to show is the story of a 21-year-old photographer who's trying to purchase a bike, and who's burdened with information and slowly baited into making decisions despite being responsible. So this is a gameplay of how it looks like. You start the interactive by placing a cookie on its slot, and based on the interactive, you see the outcome on screen. So you visually identify the cookies on screen, and based on the decision associated with each cookie, you take it as a part of the game, and then you view what comes next. You unlock every level consequently. So this is an example of, what it looks like on screen as you play it. And this is a simple overview of the gameplay and what it looks like. And the story is intentionally sarcastic, and the language is constructed in a method to display what it outwardly is, to kind of communicate the true intentions of these applications, as opposed to how they presently portray themselves. So it is a work of satire, and it can act as, a way to bring forth awareness as to what really is going on behind the scenes of these apps, and the way they seem is, it's not like they're in our best interest. So it's a way of highlighting that. So yeah, it's based on user testing. It's meant to be taken lightheartedly. It's also supposed to have, it's supposed to be funny and not as serious as the topic is, but at the same time trying to convey the message and, try to bring forth awareness on the generation and our spending habits. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavannya and Seunghyo. Omar, looking forward to hearing your comments and questions about these two projects. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much. Those were both really interesting to look at. I think I'll just go one by one. I think we have, is it 3 minutes for each one?
You can take a little more.
Okay, great. So I'll just start, Seunghyo, with your project. I think, firstly, the focus area here is, it's one that people tend to avoid, like working with kind of very arcane systems and sort of like government public databases. But those are also like some of the areas that, if they were fixed, if they were more efficient, you can have like some of the greatest impact. So I like that your project focused on that. I particularly like the kind of research aspect where I think a lot of the time as technologists, we want to just make something more efficient. But what I saw in your project is you acknowledge like, hey, actually 50% of the people are already calling in by the phone. And that's important to note that, as you transition to an interface that you're proposing to be more efficient and more seamless, you need to acknowledge that some people aren't going to necessarily know how to interact with some of that technology. So, those are just kind of my initial reactions. I think my biggest question is like, why did you gravitate towards the chatbot interface? Did you try out, maybe just restructuring the UI or taking another approach? What kind of led you to make that decision?
Yeah, because I was also thinking of like redesigning the whole website categories, but I think like the problem was that people are having a hard time like finding among those kind of like best information. So I think like the chatbot would be like a great technology to make people to easily browse and find out directly.
Okay, that makes sense. And I can see also, based on some of your research, how people are already kind of gravitating towards that conversational interface being the phone. Yeah, I think what's interesting about the project is that it does look like a pretty effective way to kind of navigate this type of information. I think what you'll see is like a pattern that a lot of arcane technology takes, where it's like, you can't really restructure it, like it's too challenging, and instead you build on top of it. And as you keep doing that, I think the downside is there's like more and more complexity and more entry points. But there still is at least a way to circumvent the system that was initially created. So it's sort of an interesting paradox where it's really hard to, I think, fully restructure something and rework it to be efficient if it's just very old and very complex. And I guess my last question here is just about sort of I'm wondering like specifically who you think this would be more accessible for. I think the implication is like the general public, including people who are maybe not already on the internet. Is that correct, or who are you specifically targeting?
So I'm targeting this like the people who are accessing 311 services through the web. And as I said in the project, like I'm grouping the target users into two groups, one for the reporters and the other for the one who are seeking for an information, so that it reduces by implementing the chatbot on top of 311 website, it could reduce the opportunities for people to seek and browse all the information by themselves.
Got you. Okay, so you segmented more by just the types of use cases as opposed to age or the type of technology that people are comfortable with, which I think is a reasonable decision given that you went with a chat interface. Okay, cool. I'm gonna, I think, go on to Lavanya's project, but thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
So Lavanya, I think there were like a lot of interesting aspects to your project, and I have a lot to say about it, but I think I'd want to just understand kind of the interplay between the board game and the, I think it's a web interface. Is that the other aspect? Okay. Yeah, just if you don't mind, like, why did you, I understand it's more tactile, but I guess why add this other sort of board game aspect to something that I think actually worked well on its own as well. So I'm curious about that decision.
The intention of the tactile interface, the initial thought process of it was that when we use physical cash, like, I mean, when we see stuff, like when we physically interact with things, it brings the message more clearly because we constantly press buttons, whereas like when you're using tangible objects, you're putting in more effort and, you're more self-aware of the information you transact. I mean, at least my personal experience when I used to use cash as opposed to Apple Pay and credit cards, I was more conscious with, how much I spent and, budgeting. So that was the main intention behind it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm wondering, one more clarification question before I offer some comments is these sort of like abstract symbols. I think in one hand, you're making everything more tactile and immediate. And, I know I'm not just making a purchase, I feel like I'm doing something. But on the other hand, it's also, you've chosen like to use this sort of like icon language, which is also more abstract. And I'm wondering where that's coming from. Those two seem like a little bit at odds.
That came from an aspect of user testing, actually. So initially, like in the previous iteration, I did have cookies that, were broken down to, the information that you actually transact, which is used to form a conclusion about you and suggest content. But it got confusing really fast, whereas the usage of symbols that one can, easily visually identify with something on the screen and the board made the flow easier for people to, get the idea faster with minimal instructions.
Okay, I really like that.
Simplification, yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that aspect and the humor makes it like a pretty approachable project, at least from what I can see. It's I think it's hard to get people to care about this topic, and I think it seems like you've done a pretty good job at that by kind of just like giving you just the right amount of information to understand the impact, but also making it accessible. I think the design language is also like pretty fun. It's not very dark for the topic. So I kind of like how it seems inconsistent at first glance, but I think as you unravel it kind of makes sense, these decisions that you've made. I think the other aspect, just kind of from a societal or like holistic aspect that I enjoyed was, going through the Parsons program, we hear a lot about like the targeted advertising and surveillance capitalism and, obviously really meaningful topics. But I think that the impact to the individual is, going into like financial management and debt, where I think even previous generations also struggle with this. That was an interesting cut. Like I wouldn't have really, I guess, connected those topics as clearly. and how, you know, maybe financial literacy is really at the core of this as well, and something that can be used to counteract that. So I think for me, you know, that was sort of a novel aspect of your project and your focus area. So yeah, I mean, all in all, I really enjoyed how you kind of reintroduced something in a much lighter, much more interesting and compelling way, and also chose to make this very specific and the takeaways that the person should have going out with it. I think you're very mindful of the level of complexity and keeping it accessible and easy to use. So great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I guess it became less complex over time. It was very complex initially. I had to simplify a lot of things, which did work out. So yeah, thank you for the comments. That's really
wonderful. Thank you for both of your presentations, Seunghyo and Lavannya and Omar. Thanks for the first round of comments. And we have one more presenter in our session today on data. So I just want to make a special recognition. Lavannya is a member of the symposium committee and has been instrumental, a key figure in making all this happen. So somehow managed to do this thesis and help mount this symposium together. So thank you for your extra service above and beyond.
And thank you, David. Your guidance was very integral to everything we put together. So thank you too.
Wow, wonderful. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to Thursday's session now that we see how everything is planned and going smoothly. So now I'm going to bring Jasmin in to give us the next and final presentation of the day one of the Entropy DT Symposium 2023.
Hey. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Jasmin, and I'll be sharing my thesis project, Share a Story. It is a project created in collaboration with Blake Eskin, and it is a curriculum and digital learning tool. So what is Share a Story? Share a Story is a curriculum and digital learning tool targeted at college-level journalism classrooms. Over the course of 100 days, students learn to build media literacy skills and an intentional news sharing habit. And a little bit on my journey to the project. So Share a Story is actually a project initiated a few years ago by Blake Eskin. He's a professor in journalism and design at the Lane College at the New School. I think he's in the audience. Hi, Blake. I can't see you, but I first joined the project as an RA, and over time, my role kind of slowly evolved to something closer to that of a collaborator, where I get opportunity to work closely with Blake and a group of journalism students at Lang, and to really kind of develop Share a Story into a full-fledged curriculum and e-learning project. And I began to do a lot of UX research and design, and also start to work on curriculum development as well. So some general overview on the learning structure of Share a Story. There are three main components. The first component is we have this 100-day sharing challenge, which is the basic framework of the experience. So for 100 days, students are asked to share a news story once a day, every day. And they're asked to choose the story based on its newsworthiness and also following specific prompts. And this is very much kind of inspired by Michael Beru's kind of 100-day habit building challenge. And the second component is a synchronized curriculum. So while the students are participating in the 100-day challenge, they're also going through these in-class exercises where they come together and really
learn to like evaluate and analyze these stories they have shared and develop media literacy skills. And the last component is an async digital participation, where the students can monitor their progress and engage with their classmates' stories on the Share Story e-learning platform. And they also get to learn about their own news interests and discover new publications. So I'm going to go through each of the elements in more details and also kind of explain what are some of the larger goals and mission behind Share Story. As I mentioned before, element number one, the 100-day sharing challenge. So the students are asked to share a story once a day, every day. And for the stories, there's really no restriction to the sources or format. It can be an article, a podcast, a video, or even a social media post. And the intention behind that is we really don't want to give students a pre-definition of what news is, and we really want to give them as much freedom as we can for them to really explore their own personal interest. But there is one condition that we want them to follow is the students need to answer in their own words, why does the story matter? In other words, the students really need to explain what makes the story newsworthy. Why is it important to share the story with their classmate? Why is it worth knowing and sharing? And one of the main goals behind this exercise is we really want to help college level journalism students to build this, just a consistent habit of reading news every day, which surprisingly, a lot of them are not good at doing, despite this is really important for their future profession. And the second thing is we really want to give the students an opportunity to reflect and kind of determine their own definition of newsworthiness, especially in today's, when you have an overabundance of information and you can read and consume whatever you want. So we want to kind of get them into a mind space and start thinking, like as young journalists, like what really mattered to them, what really they want, what do they really want to write about and share as news. And the second component of the whole curriculum is the synchronized in-class curriculum. So throughout the 100-day challenge, the students will meet in class, and then during class time, they're gonna come together and analyze these stories together. And they will go through a series of exercises specifically targeted at kind of teaching them media literacy skills. And these exercises will also give them the opportunities to engage with these shared stories together as a community. So we have about like 15 exercises that we developed, and I wouldn't be able to go through every one of them. So I'll just show you one example exercise. And this exercise is called Research and Author, where we ask the students to go through their shared stories from the past week, figure out who owns the publications behind these stories, and really think about the following questions. For example, is there an individual owner behind these publications? Is it public or private, for-profit or non-for-profit? What else do they own? When was it founded, by whom? And in doing so, we really want the students kind of put these stories in a larger context of news production and really start to think about when they're evaluating information from the story, think about who is it being produced for and from whose point of view it's written from. And this kind of takes us to some of the other goals of this curriculum. Is Share Story really responds to this pressing need for better media literacy skills in the US. But unlike other traditional media literacy curriculums, which there has been a lot developed over the past decades in the US, Share Story will take on a more interactive and student-driven learning approach, where because the students are sharing their own stories, they're basically generating their own kind of learning content. Another goal is to really cultivate a small-scale news exchange that's similar to community journalism. And this is something that is very much lacking today in the US. And we're hoping to kind of encourage students to think about what it means to like participate in community journalism and local journalism, and really think about, again, like maybe not just following what is the most popular headline, like what the big newspapers are reporting on, but think about what really matters to their more immediate communities and people they know. So these first two components, we actually had the opportunity to test it at Lang in one of the journalism classroom. And also we've been working with UNC Chapel Hill remotely to test this. And through surveys and interviews, we observed that like a lot of actually positive outcome. The majority of the students developed a more intentional news habit and also an increased awareness of their personal sharing strategy over time. And this is a quote from a student who participated in this. She shared that most big news outlets report the same stories. It is sometimes hard to find something outside the bubble. And I'm trying to find stories that I think would matter to me or really interest my peers. And she thinks that what really helps is this question of why does it matter personally? And that really helped her find better stories. And I think this is really good indication that this exercise over time kind of really gets students to think about this question of what is newsworthy. But of course, despite some of the success we saw, we still have a lot of challenges. And in the current setup, the students rely on a variety of digital platforms to participate in the curriculum. These include Airtable, Google Form, and Slack. And while these tools has been really helpful, the students also found them overwhelming and difficult to navigate sometimes. And we also feel the need for more peer interaction in the learning process. So this kind of takes us to the third component of the curriculum, which is the e-learning dashboard. And this is really the kind of component that ties the whole experience together, where the students will be able to, through the platform, be able to submit their shared stories, track their progress in the challenge, discover their own reading habits and new publications, and also interact with their classmates' stories. Because of time limitation, I'm not going to go too in-depth in the user research, but I'll give you like an overview of the process. So how I go about designing this is I start with like a couple rounds of surveys and interviews and kind of gather a list of features and requirements. And then we perform a card sorting test with the students and determine like a list of design requirements for each section of the dashboard. And then the next phase is wireframing. And we also did a couple rounds of testing with the students where which was a really helpful process because I was able to identify the interface design that's most optimized for the learning goals, but still engaging for the students to use. And I was also able to find more opportunities in the interface to encourage a practice of diverse sourcing and collaboration. So I will now show you the high fidelity prototype. Let me reshare. Okay. Can you see the Figma screen? Okay,
yep.
Great. So this is the page that the students will first see when they launch the platform. So they'll first see like a progress bar showing how far they're into the challenge. And there's a call to action button that will take them to the sharing page, or they can go to the class dashboard, or they can go see their individual dashboard, which we'll go to next. And this is the individual dashboard for the students, their own progress. So first we have like the section where they see again which day they're into the 100-day challenge. We have a streak system and a reward system. And to your right, there is a little kind of Spotify wrap, like analysis of their news habit over time, where they get to see their most shared publications, their news distribution, like what kind of news they share the most, and also what topics that they share the most. And you can also see like a little percentage. And in this section here, the students can like go through the stories they've shared over time, and also see like what their classmates respond to the stories. And there's also a little section where when one of their classmates share a new publication, they get a notification here, and this will kind of encourage them to explore those publications or kind of share in response to that. So, see, and this is the class dashboard. So this is where the students will get to see stories shared by their classmates. So each of the bubble kind of represents like the main category of the stories. And you also, on the right, you get again, like a kind of overview of the sources that are being shared this again is to, in a way, like get the students to think about like diversity of sourcing. And when you click into each of the category, you get these like individual news card, and you can like share a story in response, react to it, or go to the link and read more about the stories. So let's see. Let's go back to the presentation. Yeah, so that is the current stage of the high fidelity prototype. And because this is a continuous project that goes beyond my thesis, and Blake and more people are going to keep working on it. And I also hope to have the opportunity to continue working on this. So the next step would just be kind of keep building, testing, and improving the dashboard, and then finding opportunities for the actual development. And we also have like more testing coming up at the NYU Journalism School this summer. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasmine. And now I'll invite Omar to ask questions and make comments. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Really, really ambitious project. So a lot to say about it, but I think just so myself and the audience are all on the same page, just want to kind of ask some clarifying questions. I think firstly, this is a space in a way that we're all familiar with in terms of, reading the news and getting exposed to it. But I'm not too familiar with like the educational journalism education. And I'm wondering like what distinguishes the platform that you're working on in a broad sense from like typical journalism education?
What do you mean by like typical journalism education?
Or I guess as I understand, this is kind of a tool to help build media literacy for students, in journalism schools. Does something like it exist, or do they, is there a sort of different approach to learning that you're introducing here that isn't previously represented?
There has been media literacy curriculum, but not specifically targeted at journalism classrooms. And a lot of those media literacy curriculums are usually have a more like passive learning model where you either like sit down and just watch like 5 hours of video tutorials or just go through a bunch of like PowerPoint. And I think Share Story is really about kind of changing that learning model and making this a lot more student driven. And I think another new element in this is also this idea of newsworthiness and really kind of getting the students to think about like what is newsworthy, like what really matters to them. And I think that is something that is not, I'm not sure, I don't think it's very common in journalism education today. I wish Blake is here to be able to speak and like speak more to that, but that is my understanding on the issue.
Okay, understood. Yeah, it sounds like maybe typical curriculums are not very kind of intentional in teaching literacy and making that an interactive process. So I see, you know, kind of the broader aim of this project. I guess one other clarifying question, that we can kind of situate this in a broader context. You know, for the students, you share a bunch of info. How do they learn whether they're sharing good things? Is it just by viewing comments and reactions, or what is kind of the mechanism for some sort of feedback loop here?
Yes, so I think that part is really comes in during like the in-class exercise where the students get together and analyze the stories together. But we really also don't want to give a very strict definition of what is good journalism and what is bad journalism, because what is valuable for one community might not be as helpful for another. Like we really want the students to kind of find a balance of both, like first being able to understand what are some of the markers of high quality journalism, but also have an understanding of like, what is my definition of what is good journalism, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Understood. Okay, cool. That's helpful and kind of helps me understand the aims here. Yeah, I think immediately, I mean, you know, the broader political and social context we're in, I think there's two big things that this kind of brings to mind. One is obviously AI and these chat interfaces and how that's proliferating a lot of media without, you know, specific sources. So seeing, you know, you focus on something that is forcing you to slow down, think about how you're sharing and what you're sharing. I think that's great. I think it's particularly important now. The other is sort of a different angle with like social media and how, you know, in a lot of ways, I think Twitter is the closest platform to something like what you're representing, where you're, you know, a lot of people are just sharing info on Twitter, and it's also, you know, a very common platform for journalists and getting real-time immediate information. So there's also a bit of a void there that needs to be filled, given, you know, all the turmoil with it. So this kind of also reinforces that relevance.
Is it okay? Can I respond to that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think this is actually a very interesting point that I wasn't able to address in my presentation. Is something we really want to create is this kind of more smaller scaled sharing, whereas you in like bigger social media platform, you often have a kind of like context collapse. Yeah, but we really hope like this, I think it is we want to create like a different kind of example where people come together and share news kind of more thinking about each other as a community, as opposed to just sharing for the sake of sharing or like for attention and likes.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a clear need there. And yeah, I guess tell me about the constraint here with like just sharing one, I think it's one article per day. Is that right? Why did you make that choice? What's kind of driving that?
So that is the structure actually when I first joined, that was already there, that Blake set up. But I very much agree with the decision and understand the intention behind it. And I think it is having to choose just one story per day. I think it's really making the process more intentional because you only have one every day. And then, so that kind of, you need to be very selective about like what you share. So I think that's why that constraint is there.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think maybe synthesizing some of my comments and offering a suggestion here. I think overall, like I've said, this is a really important problem to solve. You're solving it in one segment, like journalists and emerging journalists, but as a society, I think media literacy needs to be taught at a broader level. So it's cool to see you focus on the problem. I think the constraints here are critical, and I like that it's forcing you to be a bit mindful and slow in how you're sharing and consuming information. I think the one piece maybe that I would have loved to see, and I'm not sure if it's out of the scope of the presentation, but in terms of like your dashboard and seeing, the representation of stories you're sharing across categories, I think one of the things that's a little hard to represent, but also very meaningful is surfacing areas that aren't typically talked about or shared, like specific topics. You look at, for example, like Sudan right now, where there's a lot going on, but not many people are talking about it in the Western media. So I think having some sort of, baseline for understanding whether, how this compares to what's going out there, maybe can help inform what's newsworthy and what's not, and maybe encourage people to share things that aren't typically covered but are really meaningful. So that's maybe the one piece I would have loved to see considered. But all in all, I appreciate the constraints. I appreciate kind of the way you design the interface to be simple and friendly as well, and tackled a really ambitious problem here. So it's cool to see the process from start to finish and all the research and thoroughness that went into it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Omar, for your wonderful comments this session. It's great to have someone from the Parsons community engage with us at this time of year and to give us the big picture and different kinds of responses. Thanks, Jasmine. Great presentation. Thanks to the other presenters from our session today and the presenters from all day today. And I hope that you all join us again on Thursday for part 2 of the DT Symposium. The topics will include community and education, games and story, art and research, environments and sustainability. So thanks again, Omar. Thanks to Jasmine. Thanks to all the symposium committee. Special thanks to the YouTube streamers who have been with us today, and we hope to see you tomorrow, Thursday, and also hope to see people in New York City at the pop-up show at East 16th Street on the 12th floor. Check the website, parsons.edu/DT-2023 for more details. Thanks. This will conclude let me just set up the pins right here. So this will conclude the first day of the DT Parsons Symposium. I'm going to put up our thank you screen and close out our stream. Thanks so much for everyone joining us today. We'll see you again on Thursday.